It's Mitch here, live for your NFC team game plans for the 2021 NFL offseason, NFL free agency. We are going to break down your favorite team's biggest needs. I'm going to put myself in the chair of your team's general manager. Any NFL team looking for a new GM? You know where to go, okay? I'm going to put myself in that chair. I'm going to assess your roster, and I am going to pick at each need and tell you some players that I feel would fit your systems, your schemes, your roster that you could go after in free agency. I will also talk about possibly some of the free agents, your current look of your roster, and how we can shape it and how we can make it a contender in 2021, or at least improve it in 2021. So in this video, we're going to go through all 16 NFC teams. If you've already watched the AFC team needs, go check that out. If you haven't, okay, because I go in depth, especially on that AFC, and I give you pretty much all my thoughts for your team this free agency, what they need to do to be successful right now this year. All right? Make sure you get in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts about your team. Let me know what you think your team should be doing, who they should be re-signing, who they should be franchising, who they should be releasing if you're in a tight cap situation. All these teams are different, and guys, the 2021 NFL offseason is a lot different, okay? We have a very different offseason right now because there's a lot of teams that are in not a great situation with the cap, okay? So there's a lot of situations where they need to release some players. They need to release some talent that maybe has been there for a couple years, that may be slightly overpaid. This year, more so than any other in recent history, there are going to be a lot of cap casualties. We are already seeing that right now. We are already seeing some of these players, like, for example, Desmond Trufant of the Detroit Lions. Just signed him last year. They had to cut him already because they needed that money, okay? We're seeing a similar thing with Kyle Van Noy, Miami Dolphins. Even though they're in a great position, they're willing to give him up to get that extra $9 million to work with because this year, the cap, it shrunk. Typically, of recent years, okay, we have seen the cap grow, the cap get bigger, right? And so that has allowed teams like the Saints to continue to sign players every single offseason and get by. But now, because it's 2021, we have the New Orleans Saints at negative $69 million in cap. So they need to work themselves out of that situation. What's going on, guys? What's going on, Luca? What's going on, Durkant? Mr. Monty? Nice to see you guys in the chat. Stay with me here. We're going to go through every team, so I'm not going to be able to get to the chat too often, but it's more for you guys to interact within each other, between each other, and give your thoughts on each team. And I'll get to you guys as much as I can. Probably after like each division, I'll ask you guys what you think in that chat. So before we get started here, of course, make sure that you do spike that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL free agency and NFL 2021 off-season videos, content, news, analysis, and more. All right, so let's get to it, guys. Let's waste no more time. Let's get to it. So the free agency team plans. Just one more time, if you haven't already, check out the AFC team plans. I did a live stream a couple nights ago that you can check out if your favorite team's an AFC team or you're just generally curious about the rest of the NFL. Head over to that video. You'll find it in the same playlist, the free agency preview playlist. If you haven't checked out any of the previews I've done for any of the positions or anything else, go check that out. All right, so let's kick it off with America's team, or at least that's what they call them. I don't know if that's what we should be calling them, but the Dallas Cowboys, okay? The Dallas Cowboys are America's team. Still, I believe, the most popular team in the NFL despite a absolute disaster of a 2020 season where they kind of completely messed up the Dak Prescott situation, right? They could have signed him to probably less money back then, but because that's an interesting conversation because, right, Dak played out the beginning of the year and played very well, but he also got injured. So in a way, Dak's actual value has risen because we've, seen the team without Dak. Okay, so that's the first thing, and they suck. Second thing, Dak showed his best football he's ever shown. But the third thing that might be in Dallas's favor is he's coming off of an injury. Now, why does that matter? Because that means that other general managers are going to be a little bit less optimistic overall about his availability. And if you're going to pay a quarterback $35-40 million, right? You want him to be healthy. You're not willing to take these risks on these players, okay? So that's the main thing with Dak Prescott, in my opinion. But that's where it all starts. Who's your quarterback going to be? And for me, I don't see Dak Prescott leaving. I think a lot of other teams, if Dallas gives them the opportunity, will be interested. If he hits the open market, Dak Prescott is going to make a lot of money, okay? Because that means that there's going to be teams bidding up Dallas to get his services back. There's going to be teams like, the Jets, like New England, like Miami. There's going to be a lot of teams that have room. Denver is another one. Washington in their own division, another one, okay? Even Carolina. All these teams are going to be knocking on the door of Mr. Dak Prescott and saying, we want you, so we're going to give you whatever you want because we would rather just pay you than try to find the next guy in the draft. And I would totally agree with those general managers if they were to do that. So Dallas, I think they're going to have to just figure out how to not let that happen. Franchise him, do whatever you can to start, and then work out that contract throughout the rest of the offseason if you need it to happen. Because it feels like they've had all this time to work out this contract and they haven't seen eye to eye. I don't know what Dak's asking for. I don't know where Dallas is at with this conversation. But if Dallas messes the situation up, it would be a major L. Okay? I know some Cowboys fans or probably some people in the Dallas building feels like they can get away with no Dak. You're wrong. They need Dak Prescott, okay? They need Dak Prescott to be their quarterback because there's nobody else that you can replace him with right now that's even near his level. In the draft, in free agency, maybe you strike a wild trade, but there's nobody out there that could replace what Dak Prescott gives you, which is an elite quarterback, a top 10 quarterback in this league right now. So get that Dak situation done, okay? So moving past Dak Prescott, what do they do from there? So we have center, which since Travis Frederick retired, we have Joe Looney, played a lot of last year. He wasn't so great. They also drafted a kid in the third round. I believe you pronounce his name Tyler Badish, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Maybe way off there. But regardless, those two guys were pretty much swapping between their roles at center, and neither of them were very good. So I think center is a priority. So let's take a look at center to protect Dak Prescott. I think the good thing about Dallas is if they get Dak back, okay, you're getting both of your tackles back. Now, I don't know. This is also a priority. Backup tackle. Because it feels like every year, Dallas is not the same team without Tyron Smith and La'el Collins, and at one point or another, one of them is going to be injured. So you need to worry about backup swing tackle as well. But let's start with center there. And when I'm looking at it, I don't think you need to go crazy here. You could bring in an average guy. I don't think they'll be in the Corey Linsley sweepstakes. I don't believe they'll be in the David Andrews sweepstakes. But I think you could maybe see what's up with Alex Mack for sure. Because I think Alex Mack would look at Dallas. This is a guy, keep in mind, Alex Mack is like borderline Hall of Fame. So if he plays for Dallas, it kind of ups his stock a little bit in terms of people get to see him in his final year. And maybe like his name goes out with more recognition, so people kind of recall him better. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I think it is a thing. And as well, I feel like Alex Mack wants to play somewhere where he can win. I think Dallas can do that. And I think Alex Mack would complete that line. If you look at some of the other guys on the market, Ted Karras is a solid center for you. Austin Reeder, Ethan Pocic, Ben Garland. We just had Nick Martin was released. BJ Finney was also released. So there was some added guys. So I currently have Joe Looney ranked as my 13th center in free agency. So he's one of the worst, currently available centers that there are in free agency. So there are definitely a lot of room to upgrade there, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. My thing would be, let's sign somebody other than Looney, let Looney leave, grab another veteran, and then maybe we look at the third or fourth round to add another center to the depth chart. Defensive line, okay, Dallas has obviously DeMarcus Lawrence signed long-term, so he's there to stay. Last year, they had Robert Quinn leave, and then they brought in Aldon Smith, and they brought in kind of a rotation of guys. So Gerald McCoy never worked out at defensive tackle. He got hurt before the year started. And they brought back Randy Gregory, who actually played really well for them at the end of the year, and I think he's there to stay. But they don't have a heck of a lot of depth on the defensive line, especially when it comes to the interior. I don't think edge is as big of a priority, but I think the way that Dallas wants to play defense, which they brought in a new coordinator, right? They're going to play more of the Seattle scheme-based defense, which is like what they played like 2-3 years ago, which that is what Dan Quinn's going to bring, of course. And I think you need a strong defensive line. So you have your anchor in DeMarcus Lawrence, but you need to add, I think, some depth at the defensive end and some studs at the defensive line. In the interior, they don't have a lot of that. So I think you could look at, who do we got? Poona Ford, I think, would be a possibility out of Seattle. You could look at Shelby Harris. Those guys are kind of maybe a little bit higher up the rankings. I don't see them going after Leonard Williams. I don't think that's really a scheme fit anyways. Maybe Sue for a 1 or 2 years. I think actually Dietrich Wise would be a really nice add for them as somebody that could play on the edge and play inside as a pass rusher as well on those big pass rush situations. I think he would fit that system very well, and I think he would be sort of that Michael Bennett type role or that Tyrone Crawford role for Dallas fans that he played when he was successful. You could look at a guy like him. Avery Jones has played in this defense before. Who else? Larry Ogunjobi, maybe take a chance. Adam Butler. Quan Short is an interesting one. They've targeted a lot of those like veteran D tackles types, like the Gerald McCoy types. So Quan Short would be that type of guy if that's what they're looking for. There are also some interesting names like F.A. Obata, who played in Carolina. Who else? Tyrone Crawford is a free agent. DJ Jones played for San Francisco. He is in that system as well, familiar with that system, same as Damian Square. There's a lot of different options that they have to go with the defensive tackle. I don't think they're going to be able to get a premier name at this position unless they make a trade or if they use a high draft pick on it. But I don't think they need to. I think they just need to add some quality depth there and some players that can play in specific situations. I think there is room for them to add a premier, like, second edge rusher on their team. Now, I just said I liked Gregory, which I do. I like Gregory. But I think you could add, Melvin Ingram, or you could add Jadeveon Clowney, Olivier Vernon. Aldon Smith is still out there. You could bring him back, probably cheaper. Vinny Curry, Danico Autry. All these players would be scheme fits, in my opinion. Dwayne Smoot, Tack McKinley. I think what we're going to see from Dallas is they're going to probably sign two of these guys in this market because I think Quinn realizes how important pass rush and the four-man rush is to this system. Now, you got the linebackers with Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, but you need to be aware of the depth behind those guys because of how often Van Der Esch has been hurt. So I think they look to the draft for that. Maybe sign a veteran linebacker that is familiar again with this system that could play behind those guys. The secondary is a major concern for Dallas. Cornerback, safety, both of those positions need upgrades. I think there are some really interesting names for Dallas. The first one that stands out is Keanu Neal of Atlanta. Obviously, Dan Quinn knows him quite well, and I think that would be an attractive location for Keanu Neal. I would think Jaquiski Tart from San Francisco played in a similar defense in San Francisco. I don't think they'll go after one of the main names like, Justin Simmons just got franchised. Marcus May is there, Anthony Harris, Marcus Williams. I think they'll be after that second tier of guys, so whether it's Trey Boston or Keanu Neal or Malik Hooker or Rashawn Jenkins, those guys I think they could all look at. I think they'll sign maybe multiple of those type of guys. I don't see Dallas really making a massive move here outside of re-signing Dak Prescott, unless it is corner, maybe cornerback. Okay, so a corner that really stood out to me is Jason Verrett. I think Jason Verrett obviously would fit this defense, and I think he would immediately give them a number one corner. So Jason Verrett is the guy I would look out for. If Dallas was to spend some money and take maybe a little bit of a risk on a cornerback, I think Jason Verrett is one that stands out. Maybe William Jackson, but I think Jason Verrett would make sense, as well as Xavier Rhodes, Shaquille Griffin, maybe even Richard Sherman. Those guys all make sense to me as well. But I do see Dallas making multiple moves at cornerback. Multiple moves, probably 3 moves in free agency. You could re-sign Chidobe Awuzie. I think they might. You could re-sign Jordan Lewis. I think they might. But really right now, all they have is Diggs, and I'm missing the other guy that they also have, I believe. They have one more guy. I just can't remember his name. But yeah, they basically have to completely rework their entire back end of their defense. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because of how bad they were. But do recognize if they sign a lot of free agents that it might take a little bit of time for all of these guys to be on the same page, especially when they're all in the secondary. So overall, Dallas, main priority for you is sign Dak Prescott. And then from there, we will take a look at the defense. Let's add some pass rushers, just a wealth of pass rushers. Doesn't have to be top tier guys, but a lot of rotation role player types. And then to the secondary with safeties and corners. And just, if we want to sign a big time corner, that would be probably appreciated because they need one of those. But safety as well. And then I think center is kind of more of a minor need because their offensive line already is pretty solid as long as they have those starters. Tackle as well, that third tackle, that will be the final thing I bring up here. I think the third tackle is valuable to them because of how often Tyron Smith has been injured. So somebody like DeMar Dotson or Calvin Beachum or Denzel Good, somebody that's kind of a borderline starter, but will take maybe a little bit higher end backup money, I think would be a valuable asset for Dallas because of how important those tackles are to their offense. So that is the Dallas Cowboys. I think they have very high potential if they hit on the right moves because they have elite talent in places on their roster. But there are a lot more holes this offseason than we've seen in recent seasons. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing because it feels like the Cowboys have stayed rather stagnant as of late. But I think you're going to see a lot of change this offseason from Dallas. So that's Dallas. The next team is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles, let's start with the quarterback position. And I put it as a need, not necessarily because I don't like Hurts, but I do see a lot of people talking about it and talking about the possibility that a quarterback could be coming. And I don't know if that's going to be like reuniting with Nick Foles in a trade or, signing Mitch Trubisky or, Ryan Fitzpatrick or somebody like that. I don't know if it's going to be one of those deals or if it's going to be like a first-round rookie. I could see really either or. In my opinion, I would stick with Hurts, and I would roll with him, and I'd see what I could get out of him for 1 year. Now, I would also be interested in a backup, Jacoby Brissett type of guy that could potentially push him and could also come in and play if need be, or if it's just not working out. But I think this season for Philadelphia is going to be more of a trial and error season. I don't see Philadelphia being a very good team this year. And they're in a terrible cap situation because over the past 3 to 4 seasons, they've kind of been all in on winning a Super Bowl, and it just hasn't worked out for them since winning that last Super Bowl. They've kind of whiffed on some of the moves, and they haven't worked out, and they've had a lot of injuries. And obviously, Carson Wentz hasn't played the best. So they've kind of missed their window, okay? So now they need to work on restructuring and basically rebuilding this entire roster, in my opinion. So quarterback, you could see one of those backups. Then when you get to the defensive side of the football, I think you look at linebacker, you look at the middle of the defense. I think they're still strong on the defensive line. We'll see what they do. Honestly, we'll see what they do with like a guy like Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham. Do they keep those guys around, or they determine that it's time for them to move off of them and get some assets in return? That will be something interesting to watch. Like, I don't know what Fletcher Cox would go for. I would expect like a first-round pick, maybe a second-round pick. He's getting up there a little bit, but he's still a phenomenal player. So Fletcher Cox, you could get a second-round pick out of him and continue to rebuild the rest of your roster, probably move some cap as well. I don't know what their situation is with Fletcher Cox, but I'm just throwing that out there. So defensively, linebacker last year for them was like maybe the worst linebacking position in the NFL, like period. They had Nathan Jerry out there just getting burnt like absolute toast. So that's something. But you look, and I don't really know how much of an upgrade they're going to be able to get in free agency unless they get like a Levante David and Matt Milano. It doesn't look like they have the money to do that. So I think if they want to upgrade the linebacker position, it's going to have to be by getting some young talent in the early rounds. And I've noticed that Howie Roseman has not taken this position seriously. He has really not. And I don't know, because Schwartz now left as their coordinator, I don't know how their defense philosophy is going to shift and how the value of linebacker may change for them. Cornerback, they brought in Darius Slay last offseason. Okay, he was fine, but nothing like special, nothing that you maybe expected. He wasn't a shutdown corner, that's for sure, but he was fine. Nickel Roby-Coleman's now a free agent. They tried to add to the corner position, which was their supreme weakness. And we see that usually with the Eagles is they immediately react through free agency by signing their biggest weakness. And they finally addressed corner, but it felt like it didn't really work. It felt like I guess their defense wasn't that bad last year. It was more their offense, to be truthful, but it wasn't great either. So you look at their defense, and safety could use a massive overhaul. Jalen Mills was fine at safety. I think he actually might be a free agent. Cornerback, overall, like the main theme with their roster is they're just old. So if I was the Eagles GM, I would be looking to trade some of my assets, whether that's a Lane Johnson or a Fletcher Cox or a Brandon Graham, anybody maybe even Darius Slay, anybody that I feel like is maybe getting to the point of the peak of their prime or just past it, and trying to get some draft picks, fix my cap situation, and start over. Because I think with the Eagles, this is going to be like a 3 to 4 year plan. That's what they kind of feel like to me. So while there's all these needs on here right now, quarterback, linebacker, safety, wide receiver, cornerback, they need all those positions, there's no question. I think they're one of those teams that they're going to be the 4th team in the NFC East. And if they were anything better, I'd be a little surprised. So I think that they're in rebuild mode, and they need to get rid of some of their guys to rework their roster. Once they do that, okay, we can start talking about some draft picks. Maybe next year is the time that we go hard in free agency and try to gain and get some players at prime positions like wide receiver, like cornerback, like defensive line, like offensive line. But I think the biggest priority for Philly right now is restructuring that cap, and that is the bottom line, man. But linebacker, I don't see them really addressing through free agency because I just don't see players that they could address. Safety, I think there's probably, like I said, lower end options that they might take chance on. I think they could re-sign Jalen Mills. I wouldn't be really be surprised by that. There's some lower end options that they could take a look at. Maybe they steal Xavier Woods from Dallas, DeMonte Casey, Demarius Randall, Bradley McDougal, these type of guys. I don't think they're maybe like 1 year contract, like prove it players, 1 year contract, take a swing type of players, maybe guys that you thought had potential, those type of guys. Cornerback, same thing. I don't see them going any long-term big deals. I just don't think they have the money, and I don't think they're in the situation where that's the game they want to be playing. I think they want to take this season as a learning process and a rebuilding process, and then from there, they can get going. All right, so that's the Eagles. The next team is the New York Giants. The New York Giants 2021 offseason, I think, is a big-time turning point. And again, guys, with this salary cap, this is probably off because Golden Tate was just released yesterday, and I did not change the graphic for it. So keep in mind that they have some extra money. I think they've been active in terms of releases, and they've been active in terms of gaining some cap to make some moves this offseason. I think this is a turning point type of offseason for the Giants. This season is the make or break for Daniel Jones. This season is, I believe, huge for Joe Judge and, laying his statement for what he's going to be as a coach. And I don't think the Giants are too far away from being like a competitive team. They were a fine, kind of somewhat surprising team last year, although they kind of ended up at the same record that we thought, everyone thought they would, which was like 6-10-ish. So I believe the New York Giants, they need to look at adding some weapons, adding some protection for Daniel Jones to see if Daniel Jones is that guy. That's my thing. Like, Daniel Jones has shown enough flashes that you should be able to take swings at wide receiver, on the offensive line, to believe in this kid that he can be your franchise quarterback. Because I think we've seen enough of the flashes that he can take that next step. So this is now year 3 for Daniel Jones, I believe. So I'd be looking at wide receiver. I'd be looking at offensive line just in general. Probably. Guard is not such of a big need, but center and tackle, both pretty big needs. Defensively, I think you need to address the Leonard Williams situation. You need to address, I don't know if they're bringing back Dalvin Tomlinson. I would probably think that they won't just because of the money. But I'd also be looking at adding a number 2 corner for James Bradberry. I think otherwise, though, they're pretty good. Like, they could use a pass rusher. Maybe that comes through the draft. On the edge, there's some guys that they could look at that I think would really, really upgrade this defense to not just a good defense, but maybe a potentially really good defense. So let's take a look at the wide receivers first on offense, which I think they could go after. So, what would be interesting? I think somebody like Will Fuller would be a really interesting addition to the Giants. Because I don't think he's going to cost all that much, and I don't think he's going to go for a long-term deal. So the way I'd be thinking is, if I'm the Giants and I have Daniel Jones, and this is like his make-or-break year for our decision on what Daniel Jones is, why not pair him with a talented wide receiver who is make-or-break and who is kind of inconsistent, but we could get him for 1 year, like $10 million, something to that degree. He was suspended last year. He's had some injury history, so he's not going to be like super expensive. But we know when he's on the field, he's really good, right? So if I was the Giants, That guy seems like a really ideal signing. He would be the last of the group of the number one wide receivers here. When I look at it, like I don't feel like Juju is a number one wide receiver. Corey Davis, I don't feel is a number one wide receiver. Now, they could take a look at guys like Brashad Perryman, downfield guys, maybe a guy like Curtis Samuel, Marvin Jones, I think would be nice for them. I think what they need is they need another outside wide receiver. I like Darius Slayton and I like Sterling Shepard, but I think what they need is another outside target that can stretch the field, has some speed, has some downfield ability, maybe he's good in the intermediate range. So maybe they get a wide receiver in their draft, but I think there's no reason that they cannot sign, one of these perimeter targets, Sammy Watkins, Nelson Aguilar, Marvin Jones, Curtis Samuel, any of these guys that I think would add a dimension to the receiving core. I don't know what their situation is with Evan Ingram either. Are they going to trade him? Are they not? I know there's been rumors surrounding that for quite some time. Offensive line-wise is where I'd really look to invest if I was the Giants and I think they will because I know who their GM is and he's big on offensive linemen. But you need to get some offensive linemen in there. They tried with Nate Solder. That didn't really work out. Of course, they drafted a left tackle last year in Andrew Thomas, who was not great. Obviously not the best tackle in the draft last year. But you still got to play it out and see how he does. But I would definitely, if I was the Giants, I'd be looking at Taylor Moton or Darrell Williams at right tackle for sure. For sure. I'd be looking at that. Guard, like I said, I think you're okay. Center-wise, I think you could be looking at, Corey Linsley. You could be looking at David Andrews, especially with David Andrews, with the tie to Joe Judge there. You could be looking at Ted Karras or, one of these mid-tier guys, but I certainly think they need an upgrade at center. Even like an average center would be an upgrade for them because they've had terrible, absolutely awful center play. So the Giants, offensive line, tackle, center. Take a look at that. I think they sign at least one pretty big name at one of those spots. Wide receiver-wise, I think they take a chance on like a number 2 wide receiver and they possibly draft one. And then I think we're looking at Saquon's coming back. Wayne Gallman, I think, is a free agent. So I think he's a free... No, maybe he's not a free agent. But regardless, you would like to have him back as a backup because he was a solid backup. Defensively, again, re-sign Leonard Williams. Do anything you can to re-sign Leonard Williams. He's your best player. He's a perfect fit for that defense. Now, from there, you're looking at, edge rusher and you're looking at cornerback. So, edge rushers for the Giants, I'd be, maybe in the Hassan Reddick, Kyle Van Noy sweepstakes, Leonard Floyd, Matt Judon, maybe even Aldon Smith, I'd be looking for potentially one of these guys that could really flash a pass rush off the edge. Doesn't have to be the most complete player, I don't think, but, obviously they're running more of a Patriot-esque type of system. So they love their edge players to be able to set that edge and play the run and do a lot of different things. So a guy like Kyle Van Noy would be an ideal fit, same as Hassan Reddick in my opinion. But I do really think they need to look at like situational pass rusher. Like Aldon Smith would be one. They had Marcus Golden. Who else? Like maybe you take a chance on Ryan Kerrigan, somebody like that. Like, I think they really need to look at that. I don't think they need like an absolute stud because they're going to be focused on retaining Leonard Williams, and it depends what their cap situation is looking like. It would be awesome if they could sign like an upper echelon edge guy, but I just don't think they're in that cap situation to do so. Maybe, but yeah, I think just getting that wealth of talent, like they had Kyler Fackrell or whatever last year. He was okay. Well, nothing special. But getting those rotation guys for the Giants on the edge, nothing crazy. I'd play it like the Patriots. I think that's what I would do. And then cornerback-wise, I think that's where, you really want to be good in this system is you want to have a great secondary. So I think they're more willing to pay great corners. Like, they paid James Bradbury, and he was awesome for them. So obviously they have a good feel for the up-and-coming corners. I think this team will be in the market for William Jackson if they can. But I also think, some of the lower tier options that would be nice for them is, like I said, I think Jason McCourty. Sign Jason McCourty. He can still play as a number 2 cornerback, and he would be a great starter. AJ Bouye. Who else? You got Garyon Connolly, who I've said great in man, not so good in zone. Fabian Moreau is a little underrated. Maybe you take a chance on that guy. Okay? I think they're okay, right? They got Logan Ryan. Their safeties are good. Julian Love, safeties are good. McKinney's going to be back. I think I'm looking at number 2 corner, and I'm looking at some depth at the edge. Nothing crazy, nothing sexy at edge, but I think if you could get a really solid number 2 corner, and again, doesn't have to be for a lot of money, I'd be very happy with that because I think they have already a foundation of a solid secondary. You bring back Leonard Williams, you get a couple depth rotation edge rushers, and your defense is going to be borderline top 10. Offense-wise, they need to look at wide receiver, and I think that will come through the draft possibly in the first round, and offensive line. If you can upgrade all those areas, you guys could be on your way to a wild card opportunity, depending on how Daniel Jones plays, or maybe even winning this damn division, because this division isn't very good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Giants do, and I'll definitely be very, very aware and critical of what they do because, of course, it's a Patriot regime, so I feel like I know those teams and the way to build them pretty well because I've kept my eye on it for so long. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. I think watching the Giants and how they surround Daniel Jones and how seriously they take this and how all in they are is gonna be a big factor. And I think how much they believe in Daniel Jones too. So we'll see. We'll see, man. The Giants are definitely one of the more interesting teams that are kind of like, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have no money, but they're kind of like in the middle, and how do they use that money? That's definitely interesting. So the final team in the NFC East is the Washington football team. I think Washington, similarly to the Giants, is a team that could be, pretty good this year. I think really what they're missing is a quarterback. And that's it. I mean, a quarterback. That's it. And maybe a second receiver. But I don't think you need to go out of your way. You got your number 1 wide receiver. Okay? Terry McLaurin's your number 1. You have a running back, Antonio Gibson. You have okay offensive line. So you can certainly improve the offensive line. Brandon Scherf's a free agent. But you need a quarterback. If you get a quarterback, you're 10-win team. Honestly. Just a pretty good quarterback. And then defensively, you're pretty good. Now, you do have some issues, you got to re-sign some guys. Moreau and who's the other corner? Ronald Darby are free agents, and maybe I would like to keep Ronald Darby. He played very well. Maybe you let go of Moreau, but you still have Fuller there who played well. Safeties are looking decent. Landon Collins a little overpaid. Maybe you want to work with that contract and do something there. Linebackers could use maybe a slight tweak or upgrade. Kevin Pierre-Louis is a free agent. He was a solid rotation player for you. And your pass rush is already very strong. You don't even need to re-sign Ryan Kerrigan. You wouldn't be worried or shouldn't be worried about that. So Washington has a very good foundation of number 1 wide receiver, very good front 7, and I think, a running back, it's more like adding flavor and the most important position. That's kind of the way I look at Washington. So let's find that quarterback first for Washington, which is going to be very fascinating. So the draft certainly could be the solution for them, but they are, because they made the playoffs, right? They're a little bit deeper. What was their record? 7-9? I don't even remember what their record was, but they're not in a prime position to get a quarterback, but they certainly are one of those teams that if they wanted to, they could trade up to get a quarterback if they really truly believe in that. I would not be surprised if Washington was in the sweepstakes for Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. I think they could be interested in both players, And I don't think really for them giving up their picks would be a huge problem. Because like I said, you already have number 1 wide receiver, and you already have number 1 pass rusher, and you already have number 2 and number 3 pass rusher. So you don't really got to worry about that, okay? But my thing is like, obviously you need tackles, you need guards. Like offensive line will be nice to have. But if you were to have Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, like who cares about your offensive line? You're still going to have a good offense. So let's look at some of the quarterbacks. So I don't think Dak will be in the Washington thing. Cam is certainly on the list. So Cam obviously has a relationship with Ron Rivera and as well Turner, who is the offensive coordinator, and Cam played very well in that system before. And actually, Cam was one of his more efficient selves in that system when he was, I think, 2017, 2018-ish, before he got hurt. He was very good in that Turner system. So Cam, I think, would actually be a very solid add because they'd already know how to use him. He already knows the offense, and he'd bring a dimension to the team that I think would make them at least unique to defend, right? So it would be better than what they had, for sure. And it would bring them a leader, something that they haven't had, okay? And it would, I just think, an experienced quarterback for that locker room. And we've seen with the Washington football team, I mean, they had to change their name. They had the whole ownership fiasco. So having a guy with the confidence of Cam Newton and having a leader like Cam Newton, I think could go a long way in making this team a lot better. You know, even if Cam Newton's not 2015 Cam Newton or whatever, if you could sign him to like a 1 year, $10 million deal, that would be a steal for Cam Newton. And I think that's what he's going to go for. Like, I think he's going to go for like 1 year, and depending on the place, $5 to $15 million. That's honestly what I think is going to happen with Cam. And at that price, that's a bargain, because I think that's a bargain in comparison to, you know, maybe some of these other quarterbacks. So there are other guys that you could look at for 1 year. I think Jameis is probably not on the table. I just don't think Washington would be a good place for Jameis, just period. I don't think that organization, nothing to do with Ron Rivera, I just don't think that's a good spot for him. And I think he really wants to go back to New Orleans. So that's kind of my assumption there. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, would be an upgrade for them. I actually think, you know, if they were to go the rookie route, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick would be an upgrade over Alex Smith or whoever they had last year. So Ryan Fitzpatrick for 1 year, $5 million, that would be solid too. Now, he would have to get used to the system, obviously, and stuff like that. And you always have to worry about he's getting older and he could fall off like really poorly, but he's better than Alex Smith. So that's not a bad option. Mitchell Trubisky, that would be interesting, I guess. You know, I don't think Trubisky is going to be a starter unless it's in Chicago. I think Trubisky is going to be a guy that's rather a project, like a high backup, or he's going to be back in Chicago as the starter. So I don't really see Washington looking at him, because I think the way they'd look at Trubisky is like, well, you know, we're pretty much the same team as the Chicago Bears. Like, we both don't have a quarterback. And, you know, Mitch Trubisky took them to 8-8. Like, we're really no better with Mitchell Trubisky. So, like, maybe they look at him as a project, but I just don't really see him being a fit in Washington. I just don't see it. So I think it's like Cam. I think it's Fitzpatrick, maybe Brissett. And that's probably it for the veteran market. And then the trades, right? Wilson, Watson. Those are the quarterbacks I look out for, and I think Cam is probably going to be the one to keep an eye on, because I think the two destinations for Cam are Washington or New England, and possibly Denver, but those would be probably the ones for Cam. Now you look at offensive line. I think Brandon Scherf, bringing him back, I don't think they've already franchised him, but I think they might. He is a very valuable player. He's a very good player. He's probably the best player on their team, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, keeping him, especially because they like to run the football. I think they value the guard position. I think they value an all-pro player, right? I think he's still, and he would be a guy that I wouldn't want to sign to like 3-4 years because I could see him falling off. But if I could get him to 1 to 2 more years at an elite level, I'd like to keep him if I could. Other guards, I think, I think like J.R. Sweezy would be a nice fit in Washington. Possibly DJ Fluker or Nick Easton. Those guys kind of stand out for me for Washington. Just like an average second guard as well would be nice for them. Wide receiver wise, this is where it gets interesting because now you're looking at the number 2. Like getting a big upgrade at number 2 wide receiver if they want to go that way, right? Let's say they get a veteran. Let's say they bring in Cam, right? Or they got a rookie on a low contract. I think wide receiver, a number 2 wide receiver for Washington would drastically improve their team. I think if they were to get Curtis Samuel, which feels like an ideal fit because obviously they know him quite well, or I don't think they'd be willing to go with Juju, but hey, who knows? Corey Davis even, like Marvin Jones, Nelson Aguilar, Sammy Watkins, any of these guys that are like number 2 quality wide receivers, I think would actually help this team a ton. So look out for that. Maybe they get like a Sammy Watkins on like a 1-year, $7 million deal. I could see that happening for sure, and that would really help them. And help take some pressure off Terry McLaurin. Cornerback-wise, re-sign Ronald Darby if you can. That would be priority number 1. Maybe bring back Moreau if he's cheap. Otherwise, I think they do a good job of finding they don't really value corner all that highly. So I think they would probably stay away from the upper echelon guys, but maybe a Chidobe Awuzie or bringing back Quentin Dunbar, possibly, maybe they might not do Quentin Dunbar because of the whole personal off the field stuff, but somebody like Cameron Sutton just feels like a Washington cornerback. Or maybe they want to go the veteran way with Desmond Trufant. But I think going with Darby as my number 1, Fuller as my nickel, and then trying to find whether it's Moreau or somebody else in that range, a number 2 cornerback. That's what I would be looking at. Maybe you could get AJ Bouye for pretty cheap. Chidobe Awuzie, like I said. One of those guys. I don't think they'll be in the top 5, like Xavier Rhodes, Jason Verrett. I don't think they'll be in that. Safety-wise, like I said, I think they're pretty good. Linebacker, I'd re-sign Kevin Pierre-Louis, and I'd probably look at, maybe like, so they play that Jack Del Rio defense, right? So, like Devondre Campbell or Eric Wilson. That's interesting. Look out for linebacker too. They always seem to love their linebackers. Maybe you could get like Michael Kendricks for pretty cheap. Yeah, I think that they'll probably bring in like 2 under the radar type linebackers. They usually do a pretty good job with that. So that's Washington. I feel they're good at tight end. That's another thing I didn't mention. Logan Thomas seems to be a pretty big baller. So Washington is in a weird position because they are legitimately a quarterback away from being a double-digit win team. And I did not feel about this team at all last year. Like, until I actually saw them play and I was like, okay, you can see clearly where they need help. Like, clearly where they need help. And yeah, like, it's just obvious. Another receiver through the draft, quarterback, corner. You just see it. It's easy. I think if you're the GM of the Washington football team, once you find that quarterback, you're laughing. So there you go, Washington. I like you guys right now. And depending on the quarterback, I think I'll be pretty high on you this offseason. But we'll see. Plus, you got more money than anyone else in your division. You got $38 million to spend. Plus, you got the best position group in the division. So that's also great, too. So good work, Washington. Okay. Now let's take a little bit of a break. Let's take a look at the comments. You guys have any questions? We're going to go to Detroit. We're going to go to the NFC North real quick. But let's get those questions in if you have any. What's going on, guys? Thanks for being here live. If you haven't already, make sure that you do Gronk spike that like button and subscribe to the channel for more BLV. I don't know if some of you are not getting the notifications or what's going on. Maybe you're just not interested. But, man. Monty says the Lions are going to draft some busts or ruin some players' careers. Well, that's not very nice to my Lions fans. I love the Lions fans in here. What's going on, Monty? Did Washington officially release Reuben Foster? The last thing I heard about Reuben Foster is he might not even come back to football. Like, his body is messed up. So I don't even know what's going on with that. Don says, Crow, when you make it to the Hall of Fame, that's not a career ruiner. That's a top of the food chain buddy. Ultra says, yo, Incognito got released. Yeah, I saw that earlier. He'll be going to the Atlanta Falcons. No, I don't know where he's going. Lane says, nah, I was never getting notifications from your channel. Wasn't even popping up in my feed. Bro, YouTube is killing me lately, like, honestly. And then the one video that does well on my channel, like the last week or two, people are like, oh, it's clickbait. Bro, I'm just trying to get views back. It feels like YouTube is just destroying me the last month. So yeah, make sure you guys have that notification bell on. I know most of you probably do that are already here. But make sure that notification is on and it's on for all videos, okay? Because that's the best way to get the content. It's, you know, or be in the Discord too, because that's where you get the announcements. All right, so let's get to the NFC North, and let's start off with the Detroit Lions. Okay, Detroit. Let me see here for a sec. Detroit. The 2021 Detroit Lions offseason has already begun because Matthew Stafford has already said adios, goodbye, Detroit. I will miss you, but I am on to bigger and better things. I'm sorry, but it's true, Lions fans. Matthew Stafford is gone, and I know you love him and he loves you. But it was time for him to say goodbye and go to LA to try to win a championship. And I hope you guys could cheer for him while he tries to attempt it, okay? Still root for Matthew Stafford, okay? But we've got a lot of needs for the Detroit Lions. We've got wide receiver, obviously, Kenny Golladay, and the potential franchise tag, which I think will happen, if it hasn't already happened. We have Marvin Jones as a free agent. We have Danny Amendola as a free agent. So we have your top three receivers from a year ago, free agent, free agent, free agent. We obviously have the tight end on lock, TJ Hawkinson, okay? The offensive line isn't in a bad spot. You have your center locked up. You have a left tackle locked up. That's good. Right tackle wasn't great last year, but you have one. Guard position could certainly use a massive upgrade, and that might be through the draft, I would think. But we've seen with this new regime, it's a completely new regime, right? It's Dan Campbell, coach, and it's a new general manager as well with a totally different perspective. We've seen this regime be pretty aggressive with the trades that they make throughout the draft to get players to play. Now Jared Goff's your new quarterback, so at least for this year. I don't know how long that's going to last. I think it'd probably be a one-year thing. And I don't expect Detroit, Lions fans, I don't expect you guys to be very good this year. But I would expect you guys to be on the up and up, or at least getting better next year. So I think your offseason this year is about kind of getting rid of some of the pieces of the old regime and restructuring your cap, rebuilding this team. And I know that Lions fans have heard this over and over and over, and it's like rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. It's always rebuild, and it's never we want to win right now. Like, I get it, but that's just the situation you're in. Now, you do have some foundational pieces, like I said, like DeAndre Swift as your running back, I think I like, although that's, at least you have him for like 3 more years on a good contract. You have your tight end. I think you're going to retain Kenny Golladay as a number 1 wide receiver. That's valuable. You could even trade Kenny Golladay for a first-round pick, I think. If you wanted to, this might be the way to go if you're Detroit. Retain Kenny Golladay on a franchise tag, and then trade Kenny Golladay to, let's say, the New England Patriots. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'll take him for a first-round pick. Trade him to a team that needs a number 1 wide receiver because you guys know that you're not necessarily going to be all that great this year. And it's kind of rebuilding, and you need those picks. So that would be a move potentially to make. Offensive line, like offensively, you guys weren't bad last year, and you guys don't have a lot of holes. Like, especially if you retain that number 1 wide receiver. Like, you can find number 2s and number 3s. Like, you don't need to really... Marvin Jones, it's his time to go. He's older. He was there for Matthew Stafford. You went all in with that, but it's time to say goodbye to Marvin Jones. He's getting older. You shouldn't be re-signing him. What you should be doing is you should be looking at, wide receivers that maybe you think have high upside that are younger, right? Like, maybe you take a look at Josh Reynolds, who was in LA with Jared Goff. Maybe you take a look at Isaiah McKenzie, or possibly you go with a D.D. Westbrook or a Keelan Cole. Some untapped potential type of guys, I think, you could certainly try to get. Now, they're not in the negative no longer, I don't think, since they released Desmond Trufant. I think they got out of the negative, so they're in a better spot now. I also saw that they restructured Jamie Collins, so that's good. They're keeping Jamie Collins. I think that's a good thing, but they're just restructuring him. I think Jamie Collins was one of the... I know that he wasn't great for you last year, but I think he's one of the better players on your defense. Defensive line-wise, Romeo Okwara is a free agent, so you got to determine if you're going to keep him. And I think I wouldn't overpay him, but I'd like to keep him because he's still quite young. And when you played in more of this 4-3 attacking style defense, he was actually really good for you guys at the end of the year. So I'd like to keep Romeo Okwara if possible. You have Trey Flowers. Trey Flowers will be interesting. Will that be a trade candidate? Potentially. Because he's kind of, out of position in this new type of defense. This isn't the Matt Patricia scheme anymore, right? So are you potentially looking at moving Trey Flowers for a 2nd-round pick or something like that? Maybe. I don't know. He's still a good player. I'm just saying. What else? Linebackers, like depth behind Collins would be nice, and Collins is getting a little bit older. Secondary needs a lot of help. Obviously, Okudah was that top pick, and so far has played very poorly. Played like a bust. So he needs to play better, but you can't give up on him yet, right? Justin Coleman, that could be a cut candidate, could be a trade candidate, could be a something candidate. Safety-wise, you have... What's his name, damn it? Forgot his damn name. But he's not bad. He's pretty good, actually. Forgot his name. But he was out of position. I just feel like a lot of these guys... Not really out of position, but they just didn't play their best last year. I think Detroit did have more talent than I think their record suggests, and I think they had, a better team. I think a lot of it was coaching. So I don't think Detroit is in as bad of a position as, say, Philadelphia. I would, again, be looking at re-signing Okwara, potentially trading Kenny Golladay, and maybe even Trey Flowers for some picks. And I would be looking at adding to just the defensive line. I'd be looking at the defensive line. I'd be looking to the corner position for young upside type players. Now let's look at the defensive line for some of those type of players. There's not a ton of them here. Odenigbo from Minnesota could be one. I haven't really brought him up a lot, but he would be a guy maybe. Isaac Rochelle, I think, is a free agent as well. He's a lower end name. Kerry Hyder, I think, didn't he play on Detroit at one point? He's not that young anymore, but maybe you could get him a little bit cheaper. Like, I'd probably be looking at those cheap options. Like, they need to clean house, like Durkant says here. And they're in a transitional phase. So, for a free agency perspective, I think most of it will be spent on getting rid of and not bringing in. They'll be wise with what they do. They also signed Tyrell Williams. I just forgot about that. They signed Tyrell Williams. He is a guy that's maybe a number 2 wide receiver. So he's probably the replacement for Marvin Jones. And that is a guy that I like that type of signing. That's exactly what they should be doing, right? Is signing a Tyrell Williams type of player where he signed like a 3-year contract for way too much money for the Raiders. And he got hurt and he was never really able to capitalize on that situation, right? Well, now he becomes a bargain. So I think that is a nice bargain move, a bargain addition to Detroit at wide receiver, at number 2, number 3 option at wide receiver. That's pretty solid. Like, I don't hate that at all. So he's probably the replacement for Marvin Jones, who's going to go for more money, probably on a 1-year, like $8 to $10 million deal somewhere else. So, yeah, I think Tyrell Williams was a nice signing, and I look to do that on pretty much everywhere where they can fill their holes for this year. And like I said, maybe swap Golladay for a first-round pick if you can. Swap Trey Flowers for a second-round pick, something like that. That's what I would be looking to do if I was Detroit. Rebuilding from the ground up and rebuilding in the image of this new coach and this new general manager. Because a lot is going to be different. Their schemes are going to be different. And yes, Detroit fans, you're once again in rebuild mode, but that's just the way it is, bro. All right. The Green Bay Packers 2021 offseason is one that I think we started off this offseason with Aaron Rodgers being all upset and Aaron Rodgers crying about not being able to capitalize. And he has a point, okay? He has a point. This team has not been able to capitalize. This team has not been able to get back to that Super Bowl. And I'm still frustrated with the way that Green Bay treated that last offseason, guys. I'm still frustrated about it. I know that a lot of people think I'm a Rodgers hater or I'm a Packer hater. I know a lot of people out there think that. Well, you know what I hate? Is teams that are in a Super Bowl window not acting like it. That's what I hate. Okay, you have Aaron Rodgers. He just won the MVP. And you did not do enough to support him to get that Super Bowl. I've had it with these Packers fans saying that Aquarius Kukadukas Brown is going to be their wide receiver. I've had it, okay? I've had it. Stop it. I don't want to hear these wide receivers in the 18th round that they got, okay? These street free agents that are going to be these go-to guys. I just can't take these Packer fans, guys, that are positive no matter what. It's like the greatest move. Like, guys, you clearly needed a wide receiver last year. You did not get one, okay? And here's the thing. I know people are going to say, especially Packers fans, Valdez-Scantling had a good year last year. Yeah, he had his moments, okay. Allen Lazard improved. Yes, that's true. Imagine if you had a second wide receiver. Imagine how much better you would be. Just imagine it. Robert Tonyan's a solid tight end, okay? Allen Lazard, I think, would be a really good number 3. I think Valdez-Scantling, he is like what the Bucks have in Scotty Miller. Like, That is what you want him to be. He is not every down wide receiver, but he comes in to play a specific role, okay? That is what I'd want from Valdes-Scantling. Not as my legitimate number 2 option, but as my number 4 play in specific situation type of guy. Maybe a number 3 you could call him. Whatever you want. But like he should be like your Scotty Miller. He should not be your number 2, okay? Your number 2, you have plenty of opportunity this offseason, Green Bay. You could have drafted Chase Claypool, okay? I'm just throwing that out there. You could have drafted Chase Claypool as your number 2 wide receiver. Imagine how much better you would have been if you drafted Chase Claypool instead of A.J. Dillon. Just think about that for a second. Think about it. So what I think Green Bay should be doing is they should be going after Will Fuller, who I thought they liked last year and they might have traded for. So I think they're going to go after Will Fuller on a 1-year contract. I think they're going to try to go after Corey Davis. I think they're going to try to go after Marvin Jones. I think they're going to try to go after T.Y. Hilton and Sammy Watkins. Any of these veteran wide receivers that can play as a solid number 2 to Davante Adams. That is what they need. That is what they need. I don't want to hear it anymore about damn Equinarius Saint, who knows what his name is, okay? I want a wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers. If you give me that, I will be happy, okay? So then past that, all right? What else do we need? Center, re-sign Corey Linsley. Do what you can to bring back Corey Linsley. Now, here's the thing with the Packers, which is why they might not give up Corey Linsley. Is because they had J.C. Tretter before him, and they seem to replace him just fine. So maybe they feel like they have the upper hand at center in the draft or wherever they get these guys, and they plug and play, and they're awesome. So maybe they feel like, okay, Corey Linsley we'd like to have back, but we don't necessarily need him back. Tackle, obviously, was an issue at right tackle, and then when you lost David Bakhtiari, even bigger issue. Now, David Bakhtiari needs to stay healthy. And I think the Packers have done a great job with building depth on the offensive line. Like, even when their tackles are out or their veterans are out or their top guys are out, they're still solid underneath, right? Like, they've had, like, guys like, just throwing it out there, Lane Taylor as a backup guard, right? Like, that's good. That's a good backup guard. Maybe you bring him back. But I would try, if I'm Green Bay, I'd be looking at the Okungs, the Illuminors, the Zach Banner, the Daniel Brunskill, who played in San Francisco, who was very good for them in that scheme. I'd be looking at all those. I'd be looking at Cam Robinson, potentially if he wants to move to right tackle. And then I'd probably be looking at depth, some veterans that you could get at swing tackle as well. Guard, you're pretty good. Like, bring back Linsley if you can, but offensive line's been a good position for you guys for a while. So offensively, the last question is Aaron Jones. Do you bring him back? Do you not? Personally, I think he's a good player. I think he's a good running back. I wouldn't. If it's, I honestly just wouldn't. I would rather spend the money on wide receiver. Especially because you already drafted A.J. Dillon. Okay? Bring back Jamal Williams if you like. Or what we can do here, okay, Green Bay, is we can look for some guys that are like Aaron Jones, but maybe not as good. Okay? Maybe we could try to get a lesser guy. Like, maybe there's Mike Davis is for cheaper, or Kenyon Drake for cheaper, or Matt Breida, Jerick McKinnon, Carlos Hyde's even been good. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Maybe you bring in Duke Johnson as a pass-catching back, and you bring in Jamal Williams with him, or you bring in James White, or you bring in Rex Burkhead as a pass catcher. Wayne Gallman's a free agent. Maybe you look at him. Like, there's a lot of these guys that I don't think you need to replace Aaron Jones. If anything, like, personally, I would let go of Aaron Jones. I would use the money I would have used on Aaron Jones to re-sign Corey Linsley or to bring in a wide receiver to sign Will Fuller to a 1 or 2 year contract. That's what I would do. And then I would have A.J. Dillon and I'd sign a running back or I'd draft a running back. Okay? Those would be my running backs. Then defensively, what I'm doing with Green Bay is I'm looking at the front seven. And with that front seven, I'm trying to build beef up front, okay? Snacks Harrison, they tried to plug him in at the end of the year. Wasn't so successful there. They got ran on by Tampa Bay a little bit. But they've improved in that department. I think you need to find a number 2 cornerback. I think a number 2 cornerback for Green Bay would be exponential. Like, instead of Kevin King, replacing Kevin King with, like, let's give you a name here, Quinton Dunbar or Bashad Breeland or Patrick Peterson or AJ Bouye or even Jason McCourty, that would make your defense so much better. Like, I don't even know. With the cornerback position, a lot of it is not just having a number 1 shutdown guy like you have, but it's all about as well the weakest link, the guy that people can pick on. So for Green Bay, you saw Tom Brady just pick on this guy all game in the NFC Championship. If you eliminate that pick-on point and you just add a solid number 2 cornerback that is just all around a pretty good player but won't cost you a ton of money, that's going to make your defense a lot better. Now, Chandon Sullivan is also a free agent. You might want to bring him back at nickel, or you might want to upgrade at nickel, okay? You might want to look at Mike Hilton or Brian Poole or Troy Hill or Desmond King or Darquez Dennard. You could look at all those guys. Mackenzie Alexander, Nickel Roby-Coleman. You might want to upgrade at one of those spots if you feel that's an upgrade. But I think Sullivan's decent. You could probably have him back for pretty cheap. Safety, they're good. Linebacker, they're not great, but you got some young players there. So maybe you add like a veteran type of linebacker that's not going to cost you a ton of money and would like to play for your team. Maybe you add like Avery Williamson or somebody like that. Linebacker, they don't really value that highly, so I don't expect them to go all out. You've got edge players, okay, so you don't need edge players. You got Rashawn Gary, you got the Smith brothers. You have Kenny Clark. So defensive linemen around Kenny Clark are important. So what I'd be looking for there is, yes, I know, Kevin King's not on the Packers anymore. It's looking to replace him. With the Packers, I'd be looking at guys like Morgan Fox, Brent Urban, Steve McClendon as a run stuffer. I'd be looking at some of these veterans to play. Lawrence Guy, Derek Wolfe, Daquan Jones, any of these guys. Like, I don't think you guys need interior pass rushers. I think you need interior run defenders. Jonathan Hankins, Henry Anderson, any of these guys, okay? Just get 1 or 2 of them, plug them in, play them, okay? So the Packers, I wish I was the general manager for Green Bay. We'd be going to the Super Bowl, guys. I'm just going to throw that out there. Number two wide receiver, number 2 cornerback, big run stuffing D tackle, and then the rest of it, I'll just look at the draft, okay? And Corey Linsley, hopefully. Let Aaron Jones go, say goodbye, and let's win a Super Bowl. That would be me. If I was Green Bay, I'd be saying we're winning the Super Bowl. I'm just saying. All right. Next, we have the Chicago Bears. Nicholas Gill's Chicago Bears. And the Bears went, I believe, 8-8 a year ago. One of the weirdest teams I've ever witnessed. Made the playoffs, got absolutely smoked in the first round by the New Orleans Saints. And they don't feel like a playoff team. They don't feel like they just made the playoffs. I'm going to be honest. They do not have a quarterback, so they got to try to find that. That's first priority. Their offensive line is doo-doo. Allen Robinson's a free agent. Defensively, they're pretty damn good, but they've got a lot of bad contracts. Robert Quinn being one of them. overall, most of it is going to be wide receiver, offensive line, quarterback, and just offense. Most of it. You could look at potentially, Roy Robertson-Harris is a free agent. He's probably going to be gone. You're probably going to have to replace him with some sort of rotation defensive lineman. You could look at edge, but Robert Quinn you already have signed, so maybe you want to look to the draft for that. And linebacker, you're good. Safety, kind of good. Like Eddie Jackson's good, but maybe strong safety. Tashawn Gibson played well for you, so maybe you bring him back. Cornerback-wise, you're solid, nothing special, but you could upgrade the nickel position for sure. Buster Screen you just cut, so you could look to upgrade that position. But overall, it's going to be offensive line, and quarterback. So let's start with quarterback. And Chicago's one of the teams that are on the list for Russell Wilson, so potentially, I could see that happening. I actually think that's far more likely than people think because I believe that Chicago is one of the only teams that can actually make it happen and actually wouldn't be sacrificing a whole lot. I think Russell Wilson looks at Chicago the same way that Tom Brady looked at Chicago, or not Chicago, but Tampa Bay, and says they're a quarterback away from being a really good team, not just a good team or a solid team, which is, pretty comparable. Chicago this year or last year and Tampa the year before, 7-9 to 8-8, pretty much the same, right? So you add a Tom Brady, you add a Russell Wilson to that mix, you would have to retain Allen Robinson. That's going to be difficult. But all of those things, and then you would be a pretty damn good team with Russell Wilson. But even if it takes 3 first-round picks. I don't think, maybe you even trade Khalil Mack in there, but I don't even know how that would work. But I don't think it would be too detrimental for Chicago to make that move because I think they have a good enough roster where they don't need a lot of needs. Just in comparison, the Raiders have not a very good roster. So for them giving up 3 first-round picks, it would be really troublesome because they have too many needs. So, but the thing is with Chicago, they need to find money to make that move happen. So I don't know about that. They would have to probably cut Robert Quinn, move Khalil Mack, something like that. So that's the first thing, Russell Wilson. You're not getting Deshaun Watson. Don't even think it. Wide receivers, Allen Robinson. I like what they have in Mooney, and I don't mind Anthony Miller, but we'll see with Allen Robinson. I think those other 2 kids would be better with a better quarterback, so I'm not willing. I think Mooney could certainly be a number 2 wide receiver, certainly. So I'm not too worried about that. If you lose Allen Robinson, you might look to the draft for a number 1 wide receiver, or the future of the position. Because I don't think there would be anybody else that you would be able to get. But I think you could still get a wide receiver where you're picking in the draft. Maybe even if you trade up a little bit. But I think they could get Allen Robinson back if he's convinced that they have a good enough quarterback there. Mitchell Trubisky could be back for you guys. I wouldn't be super shocked by that. I don't know if that's the greatest move, but if there's no other options, it's not the worst move. I'd certainly like to go elsewhere. You're not really in a position to draft one unless you trade up. Unless you trade for Russell Wilson, it's not going to be a massive upgrade for any other veteran unless somehow you luck into Dak, which I don't see that happening. Or you could maybe try to look to make a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe. I think that would be a good fit in Chicago in Matt Nagy's offense. And that would be an upgrade over Mitch. You could, I know there's always been the Cam things. Maybe. I don't really see him fitting there that well. So, yeah, a lot of it depends on the quarterback because I think the quarterback dictates if Allen Robinson returns. And I think Allen Robinson returning dictates what you do at wide receiver. And I think offensive lineman signing, if like Russell Wilson were to come, like that would change a lot of things. So a lot of it is dependent just on what happens with the quarterback. So it's tough to really say. But offensive linemen, you need tackles, I think. There's not a lot of options. Like, I don't think you have Trent Williams money. I don't think you have Taylor Moton money. I don't think Darrell Williams would go to Chicago. Like, maybe you're looking at a slight veteran upgrade. Maybe like, you know, a Luminor or Okung or Banner, one of those guys. Maybe you take a swing at Cam Robinson. But I don't see anything crazy there for Chicago. Maybe offensive line in the first round, the second round certainly could happen. Guard-wise, you guys are decent at guard. I believe you have Daniels and you have Whitehair at center, I think. So you need one guard, I think. Probably. We'll see what you do there, though. Don't see you spending crazy money. I think for Chicago, the money will be quarterback. The money will be wide receiver. The money might be tackle. Edge, I could see you taking a chance on a high upside edge player. You know, you seem to like those veteran type of edge players. So, you know, maybe Ryan Kerrigan or Samson Ebukam, who's played in kind of a similar defense. Maybe you go after like Terrell Basham or just looking down this list. Tyus Bowser, I think, would fit your defense pretty well. Aldon Smith, I could see you guys going after Aldon Smith. I think he'd be good because he played in that 3-4 defense when he was younger. I could see probably not going to bring back Leonard Floyd. Matt Judon would probably be too expensive. Like I think once you get up there, it'd probably be too expensive. So I think it'd be Marcus Golden too. I think Marcus Golden, if you're looking for a number 2 pass rusher, would be a really nice ad for like a 1-year deal. So those would be the guys I'd be looking at for edge player. Safety-wise, like I said, I think probably Gibson is going to come back, but who else? Oh, also nickel. I think nickel's also a need. So nickel, I could see maybe like Jordan Lewis from Dallas, Mackenzie Alexander, Channon Sullivan from Green Bay, Denard from Atlanta. I don't see you going after Mike Hilton, Brian Poole, Troy Hill, probably too expensive. DJ Hayden could be a value. Nickel Roby-Coleman could be a value. So those are the guys I'd be looking at for the nickel position. Cordell Patterson's also free agent, right? But he's just a returner. I don't think he'll be too expensive for you guys. So if I was Chicago, solve the quarterback. Quarterback will dictate what happens with the rest. Hopefully we can get Allen Robinson back. If not, look towards the draft. Offensive line would then be next for me, and then I would be looking at, we'll see what the veteran market is like, and probably address that as well high in the draft, first or second round. Tackle-wise, maybe we sign a veteran guard, and then I'd be looking at some veteran edge players and cornerbacks. That's probably Chicago's plan this offseason. But like I said, it all kind of comes down to who their quarterback is going to be at the end of the day. That's Chicago. The last team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are a fascinating team to me because I remember last offseason I was very down on Minnesota after they went to the playoffs the year before and actually upset New Orleans. And I was saying, I don't think Minnesota's going to be very good. A lot of Minnesota fans didn't like that. Okay, they didn't believe it. I was right. Pat myself on the back. Be an absolute dick about it, but that's the way I am. But I said last year that sometimes you got to take a step back before you can take a step forward in the NFL. And if Minnesota does correct moves or does the right things here, I think they could get back into playoff conversation. They were not that far away last year, honestly. Now, the biggest addition to your team is a guy that didn't even play last year. That's Danielle Hunter, okay? You were missing your number one pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, period. So with him back and with Michael Pierce back, that is a drastic upgrade to one of your greatest weaknesses last year, which was the defensive line. So now you have two starters, like not just starters, you have one really solid starter at D tackle and one really awesome player at end. So now you're looking for a number 2 pass rusher. You're looking for depth at D tackle. You're looking for probably corner, safety. Anthony Harris is a free agent, so maybe you try to retain him. Maybe you don't. Cornerback I'd be looking at for sure. And then offensive line, right? So the team, the way it looks right now, they're not in a great cap spot. So I wish they were in a better cap situation. I don't know how they're going to work that out necessarily. They're not in a terrible spot, but they're not in an ideal position. So wide receiver, you're good. I always love it when a team's good at wide receiver, okay? Because that is like one of the staple positions that I'm like, okay, it's quarterback, it's wide receiver, it's edge or corner, right? So like if you're good at one of those spots, I'm cool. And tackle sometimes. Minnesota sucks at tackle. They're good everywhere else, though. They've got a premier edge player. They've got, for their defense, linebacker's pretty important. You've got a really good strong safety. You've got a good enough center, a young tight end that I like. Obviously, an awesome running back. You have a good quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins is a top 15 at least, maybe top 12-ish quarterback, and at any given time can play like a top 10 quarterback. And you have a really strong running game, even without really making any moves. But you need a better protection for Cousins when it's the drop back pass game. I think a lot of the problems with your offense, even though your offense is pretty good, a lot of the problems with your offense are just when it's not play action, you need to be better in traditional passing, drop back pass game. And I don't think Minnesota is very good with that. But you have a quarterback, okay? Kirk Cousins. Running back, we don't really got to worry about. You're fine there. Maybe you add a backup. Maybe. Wide receivers, okay, maybe you look at number 3 wide receiver. Maybe. Sign a Danny Amendola, a Golden Tate. Why not? 1 year, $3 million, play the slot for me. I need a guy like that. Maybe you add some speed. Damiere Byrd or Isaiah McKenzie. Stretch the field with one of those guys. I don't know. I wouldn't mind that. Tight end wise, if you want to go 2 tight ends, it feels like Kyle Rudolph too expensive. Maybe you look at one of the lower tier options like Derek Carrier or Josh Hill. Anthony Ferkser maybe. Trey Burton. Those guys. Tackle wise, which is a primary need. I think right now they have both of their tackles signed, if I'm not mistaken. But they do need an upgrade there. That's where they could look to the draft for a tackle, possibly. Because I don't think they're going to be able to sign like one of these upper echelon tackles because I don't think they have enough money. So I don't think they're going to drastically be able to get better on the offensive line because they just don't have the money. But I'd be looking at Daniel Brunskill for sure. I think he fits the scheme very well. I like, who else? Denzel Good, maybe. Somebody that can move. Who else? Guard-wise, there's quite a few. Lane Taylor. J.R. Sweezy, I think, would fit. Tom Compton, maybe. Was he on the team before? Lower end options like Alex Redmond, Forrest Lamp, maybe. You guys do need guards because I think both of them are free agents. So maybe looking to upgrade at guard, getting one really good guard would be awesome. But I don't think there's anyone like Brandon Scherf and Joe Thuney are really good players. I don't think you can afford them one. I don't think they're a great fit for your scheme. Like you run that Kubiak kind of offense, right? So you want the guys that can move really well and get into open space and run zone schemes. And like You guys are good at center. D-line wise, I'd be looking for a veteran. I think Larry Ogunjobi would be a really good ad. I think Kwan Short would be a really good ad for your system. I think Avery Jones would be a good ad. Who else? If you want a bigger guy, like John Jenkins has been pretty solid as a run defender. You kind of got the run defender. It's more kind of trying to find that interior pass rusher that's been missing from your team. And edge number two, I'd be looking at Vinny Curry, Trent Murphy, Danico Autry, Kerry Hyder, Olivier Vernon, Justin Houston maybe. Might be too expensive. Maybe you bring back, what's his name? I can't say his name now. Odingabo. I can't say his name. I said it earlier. I can't say it anymore. Who else? Do you bring back Everson Griffin for a reunion as more of a rotational player? Eric Wilson's a free agent. You'll probably have to replace him with probably like a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. Linebacker is valuable to your system. Anthony Harris would be nice to have back, but if you can't get him, I think some wise additions would be Malik Hooker, Daron Harmon, DeMonte KZ, Demarius Randall. Free safety wise, I'm looking. That's about it. There's nobody really else. Cornerbacks, I think you could use some corners just in general. I don't know. Again, like William Jackson, but I don't know if you have the money, man. So looking at the lower term, lower key options here, I think, Cameron Sutton, Fabian Moreau, Akilla Witherspoon, Michael Davis, maybe a veteran, adding a veteran to the mix like Desmond Trufant or Drake Kirkpatrick might not be a bad idea. So a lot of it for Minnesota, I want to see what their cap is like. And I think they have the ability to add some gems to the defensive line, to the offensive line, to the cornerback position. I don't think Minnesota is going to be a big player in free agency because they simply don't have the money. But I think finding some veteran diamond in the rough options at their positions of need will dictate whether or not Minnesota can take that next step back into the wild card. Because they're already getting additions off of COVID and other things and injuries and things like that. They already have a solid offense. They have a better defense with some of their key pieces back. But if they lose Anthony Harris, if they, that's a big loss. I just think for Minnesota, it's going to be more about finding those diamonds in the rough in free agency, not really the big long-term contracts or anything like that. They're just not in a position to do that. So most of their additions are going to come through the draft. Maybe we could even see them trade somebody. We'll see. But that's my thoughts overall on the Vikings. Potentially a really good team. They can make the right additions, but also potentially a team that maybe doesn't go anywhere. They're not able to make those right additions. So that's the NFC North. Yo, what's going on, guys? We have more people in the chat. If you haven't already, make sure you do Gronk spike that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Bottom Line View. Thanks, guys, for joining me here tonight. Hopefully you're enjoying. Hopefully you are. Plenty of more free agency coming to you soon. Okay. What else? We have the NFC South next. So let's take a look at the NFC South. Lions go 4-12? Okay. I don't know if they'll get 4 wins. Thank you, Steeler Nation. I appreciate it, man. I hope you guys are enjoying. I know I'm kind of rambling a little, but I'm just trying to give you as much info as I can. And most of this, all of this is just off the top of my head. I mean, I don't have no script, okay? So I'm playing GM on the fly, but I'm still probably better than most of your GMs because a lot of these GMs suck. Anyways, let's get to the NFC South. Okay. The Carolina Panthers 2021 free agency plan will be one that I feel will quietly shock the world. Or at least they have the potential to do so. Okay? Carolina is one of those teams that have been rumored to be trying to upgrade the quarterback position. And whenever that's the case, you know that they could make waves. That they could make a storm. A storm is coming to Carolina. Is it Deshaun Watson? Is it somebody else? I don't know, but Carolina wants to get good, and they want to get good now. If I was the NFC South, and if my name was not Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'd be looking for next year, okay? I'd be looking to build the best possible foundation of a team that I can for 2022. That's what I would be doing. If I was the general manager of Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans, I'd be saying, what do I have to do to be good in 2022? Because I know in 2021, we're playing that all-star team in Tampa Bay, and I don't really, let's be honest, let's try to win, but if I'm being honest with you, second is probably the best we're going to do. So let's try to be good in 2022 when hopefully Tom Brady retires, or at least they lose some of their players, okay? So Carolina, I think that's the way you got to go. Because I think Carolina quietly had an awesome offseason last year. Besides the Teddy B thing, I don't think they did a good job with that. I still stand by that. I still don't think Teddy Bridgewater was the guy. I think they actually would have been better last year with Cam. That's just my opinion. But I think they could go after Watson. Certainly. I think it's between Carolina and Miami. Those two teams make the most sense. So if they were to get Deshaun Watson, guys, that would totally change this franchise and the future of this franchise and what their needs are. Okay? They also got us. Okay, if it's not Deshaun Watson, who's the quarterback? Are they trying to trade for a quarterback in the draft? Or are they bringing back Teddy Bridgewater? Honestly, from the veteran options that are available, you're not getting Dak. You're not, right? Who else is really better than Teddy? Teddy and Cam, kind of the same level, right? Nobody else is better. I mean, unless you take a swing at Jameis, if that's the way you want to go, but I don't really see that happening. So hopefully, if you don't get Watson, it's just Teddy one more time, and we see if our defense gets a little bit better and our offense gets a little bit better, maybe our team's a little bit better and maybe we're more competitive with Teddy. Because I don't think Teddy's bad by any means. I think he's fine. But he's just not a game-changing quarterback. So I think he's fine for this year, but you probably got to look towards the draft at a certain point. And I know that ownership there is getting a little bit antsy, right? That front office is getting a little bit antsy to make a move at the quarterback position. So that is definitely something to be aware of. Okay, so past the quarterback position, you have to look towards the offensive line. So you have a lot of holes, a lot of free agents on the offensive line. Both your starting guards and both of your starting tackles are in the free agency market, I do believe. One of them is Taylor Moton, who I would hope they re-sign because he's a very good right tackle. He's probably a top 10 right tackle in the NFL, if not borderline top 5 right tackle in the league. He's right around that range. So he is a very good player all around, doesn't really have any weaknesses, still pretty young. I think he's 26. So ideally, you'd like to have that tackle there for the future of the quarterback position. Left tackle-wise, they're in a position where if they wanted to, Carolina, they could sign Trent Williams. They could. If they wanted, they got enough money. If they want to sign him, or if they want to sign, I don't know if they'll bring back Russell Okung. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't think so. Everyone else, though, there are some veteran options. Maybe you go with Cam Robinson, more high ceiling, or Jermaine Ifedi, kind of more high ceiling type of guys, but they're not anything special. Other than that, it's all kind of holdover type of guys, or maybe you go with a Jermaine Illuminor who can play both tackle or guard. But you're probably trying to re-sign Taylor Moton, going all in on Trent Williams, or you're looking to the draft, or you're just looking at a bridge tackle type of guy, which would be the DeMar Dotsons, the Kelvin Beachums, because all of these guys are free agents. Now, guard-wise, I don't really know. See, this is because they're a totally new regime, right? Carolina, they've had 1 year in the NFL. They've got fresh coaches from college on defense, on offense, at head coach. It's hard to know what their thing is, right? I know what New England's thing is. I know what Atlanta's thing is. I know what Seattle's thing is. I know what Baltimore's thing is. Carolina, I don't really know, right? So, guard, I could see them signing Joe Thuney. I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. I just don't know how much they value, Joe Thuney. I don't, right? But I could see it. I could see them signing Gabe Jackson or Lane Taylor or any of these guys. Nick East. I think they do lean towards value at guard just based on how they addressed the position last offseason with John Miller and with Chris Reed, who were kind of okay for them, but nothing special. They could go a similar route with those type of guys once again. But again, they could go all out. I just really don't know with Carolina. They're an interesting case. So tackle, guard, I could see a wide range of possibilities from Carolina there. But I definitely think, if I was the GM, I'd be trying to re-sign Taylor Moton and then probably looking at left tackle for the draft and signing maybe one of the veteran guys if I could. Now, defensively, right, we have the offense, tackle, guard, quarterback. They could use a tight end on offense. That's something you might look towards the draft for. Or maybe you do have quite a bit of space, so if you want to bring in another option at tight end. Now, I know their tight end position is an extremely valuable part of their offense. It's more wide receivers, 3 wide receiver base type of thing. So maybe they want to go with an athletic guy like Gerald Everett if he's not too much money. Maybe they like Jared Cook, bringing him in. If they have Teddy Bridgewater, that would make some sense because there's some previous chemistry there. Kyle Rudolph, same thing. So if they wanted to go 1-year contract with a veteran tight end, that could make some sense. I think, I wouldn't mind taking a swing on Jordan Reed. Why not? 1 year, $3 million for Jordan Reed. Sure, he's still a starting caliber tight end. He just never really plays that much. But I'd definitely probably be drafting that in the draft. 3rd round, 2nd round for Carolina, if they value it, though, right? I don't know if they do, right? They've been with Ian Thomas. They didn't bring back Greg Olsen. I don't really know how they feel about that position. Maybe Trey Burton. It does feel like they like athletic guys, though. Defensively, cornerback is a place that I'd be looking first and foremost. So Dante Jackson played well for them, and I think he's maybe a number 1 corner. Now, it did suck that James Bradbury left because he was unbelievable for the Giants last year, and they couldn't re-sign him. But I don't, at the time, it didn't feel like a bad move, but just in hindsight, it felt like, they could have used him back. But corner was certainly a weakness, whether it was nickel or outside corner. They tried to address part of that in the draft. I don't love him. I love Chin, though. And linebacker-wise, they've got 1 linebacker, but they don't have 2. So you've got Derek Brown on the interior. F.A. Obata, I'd look to bring back. He's a solid rotation player. You've got Brian Burns on the edge. You're probably looking for another edge player, although you drafted Yetur Gross-Matos, who I think you like. But I think you're looking for probably veterans on defense. And I think you're looking for fast linebackers. So I'm going to throw out for a linebacker here. I'm going to go, what about Gerard Davis or potentially Grugier Hill, maybe a middle linebacker. Nicholas Moreau, solid player. I could see them going for Jayon Brown or Matt Milano. I definitely could, especially Jayon Brown. I think Jayon Brown would be a nice fit for them. Denzel Perryman, I think, fits the billing for them. Speed, that would make sense. Maybe they want to go veteran route. If they do, KJ Wright would make some sense. But linebacker beside Shaq Thompson would probably be somewhere I'd be looking. But cornerback especially would be where I would look. So cornerbacks, I'd look to upgrade the nickel position. Okay, so they play a lot of mix and match coverages. I think somebody who would be good in that, I think Mackenzie Alexander is very underrated. I think he would be a good ad for you and wouldn't cost a lot of money. I'd be willing to take a chance on Jordan Lewis. I'd be willing to look at Troy Hill, potentially Desmond King. See, I think Troy Hill is going to be a little bit more expensive. Brian Poole and Mike Hilton will probably be the most expensive. And then after that, it will be those type of guys. But maybe I'll throw out Mackenzie Alexander as a guy that I think would be a pretty good ad. On the outside, you're looking for, I think they could go. Again, guys, I don't know what Carolina's thing is. It feels like it's D-line. It feels like it's front. You usually can't spend on both. I think William Jackson, if they want him, they could have him, I think. I think they could. And I think that would massively upgrade their defense. Because you'd have two studs with speed on the outside. So those guys would be cool. Jason Verrett, too. Ronald Darby, potentially as a value signing. I know they tried to sign Bashaud Breeland like 2 years ago. That was, I think, Ron Rivera, though. Chidobe Awuzie might be underrated on the market. Michael Davis is more of the zone type of guy. But I'd like them to look at like probably like Awuzie, Jackson, Verrett. I'd be legitimately looking at one of those top corners if I was Carolina. Because I think you've got a really good edge rusher, a really good interior player, a really good linebacker, a really good safety, a pretty good corner. But if you added a really good corner to what you have already at every other position, I think Carolina, like if you signed William Jackson, let's say you sign William Jackson and you have Dante Jackson on the other side, you sign Mackenzie Alexander nickel, you've got Chin on strong safety, you've got free safety, you have Justin Burris, let's say, or maybe a rookie. Then linebacker-wise, Shaq Thompson. You add a veteran beside him. And then you have Derek Brown. You have Yetur Gross-Matos, maybe another rookie. And you have Brian Burns. That's not so bad. That's a foundation of a really good defense. And then offensively, you're still trying to figure out quarterback. But I think Carolina has a lot of room to grow. And I think they might not be great this year, although I think they'll be competitive, but they could be really good like next year if they get that quarterback. So, yeah, they have a lot of money to do it with and use to upgrade, and I'm very, very, very fascinated because I think they could upgrade in a lot of different spots. I'm really interested the most, like I said, with Carolina to see what they do because I want to start to get like a map of what they like. Because I didn't really feel like I got a map of what they like last offseason. It takes a couple off seasons to truly understand what a team likes to do in their process. And for Carolina, I only have 1 year. And in the draft, they did like all defense. So we'll see what they do again. Maybe they go all defense again, or maybe they go all offense or all offensive line or something. I don't know. Wide receiver-wise, right, Curtis Samuel's a free agent. But you got Robbie Anderson, you got DJ Moore. Both those guys are studs. So maybe you look for a number 3 wide receiver. That could come in the draft. I think Curtis Samuel will probably be leaving. I just think he'll cost too much. I think other teams will value him a little bit higher than you. So I'd be looking to upgrade that defense, man, in the free agency. I think there's plenty of spots to do that this offseason. So that's Carolina. What's going on, guys? I see we have some new people in the chat. What's going on? If you haven't already, make sure you do Gronk spike that like button, guys. Gronk, spike it. Okay. We have some updates on the phone. Okay. Thanks for staying around. What's up, Asia? Okay, let's go with Atlanta. The Atlanta Falcons 2021 NFL offseason is going to be one that is revolutionary for Atlanta. That is going to be a game changer for Atlanta. Where do they go? What do they do? Do they stay with Matt Ryan? Do they move on from Matt Ryan? Is he their guy for the next couple of years? Arthur Smith's first go at it, a new GM, a new coach, probably a lot of new players and new systems and new schemes. And luckily for you, your defensive coordinator is Dean Pease. So I got you covered on that one. I know Dean Pease pretty well, all right? Just going to throw that out there. So I understand what you guys need on defense, especially offensively. You don't need a lot anyways. Mostly offensive line and probably a running back. But we'll see what they do there for Atlanta. And I'm going to tell you what they should do. So Atlanta, defensively, you have spent some capital on the secondary already. And you're not great there, honestly, but you just spent some capital at number one corner, right? First round capital at corner. So you can't really afford to spend a lot of capital at corner. Now, what I would say about Dean Pease's system is it's a lot of mix-match coverage, and he'll do whatever his players do best. So that's the good thing about him, okay? He'll play zone if you're better at zone. He'll play cover 2 if you're better at cover 2 or cover 3. He'll play quarters if you're better at quarters, right? Dean Pease is good at a lot of different things, and he likes to mix and match. So he likes guys that are smart on the back end, and he likes guys that can play a lot of different styles of defense. So I could see Atlanta looking at edge rusher, but Dean Pease is a guy that, similarly in the mold of a Don Martindale or a Brian Flores, I think they would probably rather have a strong secondary and a weaker front than the other way around. Now, it is nice for Atlanta, and I think you'll see guys like Deion Jones used in new ways that I think will actually make them better players. Like, I think Deion Jones will be more involved as a blitzer and stuff like that. I think Grady Jarrett obviously is going to be a beast for you once again, but you need some complementary edge guys. I think the biggest acquisition you might have is Dante Fowler actually being played in the right position. That might actually be a good thing for you. But so for edge player, now I don't know what the cap situation is going to look like, but I'm just going to say guys that I think would fit you well. So you're done with the Takk McKinley thing, okay? So I like maybe a Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year contract. I like Leonard Floyd for you. I like Matt Judon. There's some connection there for sure. I believe. I actually like Kyle Van Noy. I think Kyle Van Noy would fit the Dean Pease defense. Hassan Reddick, if you could. Yannick Ngakoue, I think would be an awesome ad. All those guys make sense to me at the top, more near at the top of the list. I think you're probably out of your price range for Shaq or Carl Lawson or Bud Dupree, guys like that. Some lower tier guys, I think Tyus Bowser makes a lot of sense. Jordan Jenkins would make a lot of sense for this defense. Who else? Samson Ebukam, I think, would be a great ad. Kyler Fackrell, even like a John Simon. All those guys. I think there's a lot of guys that fit that mold for you at the edge position. You're probably looking at the draft to get a real stud at that spot, but you have plenty of opportunity to get solid edge contributors. And like I said, I think Dante Fowler will be a better player as long as they hold on to him in this system, because I think he'll be standing up more. He'll be playing more like he played with the Rams, if that makes sense, than he did last year. And then, right, linebackers, you're good. I think you got two really solid, if not really good linebackers. Keanu Neal is probably going to leave. I just feel like he has been more, as good as he's been kind of an Achilles heel for you somewhat. I think what you guys need really is a free safety. So I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta was trying to get a free safety in the draft, like second round, maybe. But I could see some of these hybrid type of Swiss Army knife, strong safety types, like the Rashawn Jenkins, the Trey Boston, or those type of guys at strong safety to replace Keanu Neal for probably less money. I could see Deron Harmon at free safety too. And corner, like I said, I think you guys have already spent some capital there. But if you were to add some veterans, Jason McCourty would make a lot of sense. I think, who else? Ronald Darby, Bashad Breeland. Maybe you bring back Trufant. Yeah, but those guys probably, I think you had Denard a little bit as the nickel corner, but you could use an upgrade there. Desmond King, maybe somebody like that. Mike Hilton, Brian Poole. If you have enough money. Again, guys, I don't know how much money they're going to have to work with here. Offensive line-wise, you're good at left tackle. Alex Mack's probably going to leave, so you need a center. And your guards aren't great. You need probably an upgrade there. Right tackle, here's the thing with Atlanta. Recent drafts have sucked for you. So you've tried to spend on corner. It hasn't really worked. You've tried to spend on tackle. It hasn't really worked. You've tried to spend on guard. It hasn't really worked. You like all these positions, right? They've tried to spend on, and it hasn't worked for them. So that's the problem with Atlanta, is they've been busting on their drafts as of late, right? They've had some really good drafts, but they've also had some really bad drafts. So I think that's part of the reason they've restructured this roster. But I think the main thing with Atlanta is expect a lot of different, okay? Expect a lot of different from your signings. A lot of the different type of players that you may have never touched before, the man-to-man corners or the hybrid linebacker edge players that didn't fit your defense before, are now going to become viable options and actually fits for you. On the offensive side of the football, I'd expect you guys to go with power, big offensive linemen. DJ Fluker, J.R. Sweezy. I expect those type of guys to be a part of your plan. Right tackle-wise, I could see, a lot of different options. If you want to bring in some competition for McGarry, certainly there could be some bridge options there. And tight end, you're good. Running back-wise, that's an interesting question. Running backs. So remember, Arthur Smith had Derrick Henry. So you're not going to get Derrick Henry. I think Aaron Jones would actually fit your scheme really well. But I don't know if you have enough money. Again, I hate this money thing. I think Mike Davis would actually be really good in the offense. Or you have another speed type option, Matt Breida, as well. Maybe you add two lower end options. Leonard Fournette even could be an option for you guys. But yeah, I want to see how Atlanta digs himself out of these holes. And once they do that, I think they're going to be able to sign some players that will have an impact. And you might be surprised by the type of players they're signing overall. I don't think Atlanta's too far away from being a playoff team again, because right now, as it stands, they have a good quarterback. They have an awesome duo at wide receiver. They have some foundational pieces on defense, like a great defensive lineman and a great linebacker. And they've got better coaching now, in my opinion, on both sides of the football. So I'm looking forward to a better coached, overall more well-schooled roster in 2021. So I think Atlanta, you guys are on the up and up, but it might take a season and off-season here to kind of restructure what the last regime was doing and try to find the new mold of type of player that you're going after. So that's what I would look for in Atlanta. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody wants to know, who is Tampa Bay going to keep? Who is Tampa Bay going to let go of? Who is Tampa Bay going to bring in? What are they going to do? Tampa Bay, can they repeat? How will they repeat? Who will Tom Brady bring in off the street this year? Tampa Bay, first and foremost, needs to re-sign their own players. I know it's not sexy, but last time I checked, this team was pretty good last year. So, by re-signing your own players, you should be good again. At least that's the theory. Now, I never like to say that, but I would think that would be the case. Now, most of your needs are not really needs. Most of your needs are re-signings, okay? So, edge with Shaq, wide receiver with Godwin, linebacker with David, and who else? Gronk, AB, all these free agents that you have, those are your needs. If you had a need, okay, that was not like from last year, say you had the same roster as last year, what would your needs be? I would say it would be third down running back and depth at cornerback. Otherwise, you guys got the best roster in the league. So I wouldn't worry about that. All right. So obviously you got your quarterback for one more year at the very least, maybe two, maybe three. We'll see with Tom. Offensive line, you are great. So that's a good thing. Okay. So offensive line, Donovan Smith signed. Tristan Wirfs is on a cheap contract. You have both of your guards coming back. You have your center coming back. So you're good on the offensive line. You don't even have to worry about that. Tight end wise, you're going to get Gronk back. Don't even worry about it. He'll be back for a 1 year, $5 million, whatever it's going to be. You've got OJ Howard, okay, who's coming back off of injury. The decision for Tampa is going to be, we'll probably have to move one of these tight ends. We're not going to be able to keep Cam Brate, OJ Howard, and Gronk. So we got to pick who we want. So Gronk's going to be one of them. I would expect OJ Howard will probably be the other one. Because OJ Howard, I'm telling you, OJ Howard was going to go off this year. Like just the way that he was looking early in the year with this offense, and once they would have got that rhythm, he would have played that Cam Brate role, in my opinion. I think they'll probably keep OJ Howard. They might be able to trade Cam Brate for like a 4th round pick. That's my guess. And then get rid of $3-4 million that they could spend elsewhere. That would be my guess. So if you're willing to get rid of some beef on the offense, it'd probably be that third tight end. Now, wide receivers, Evans has said that he's willing to take a pay cut. He might, okay, but I don't think he should, honestly. Like, just, he's not even being paid that much. He's being paid like $15 million, which for Mike Evans is like very fair. If not, that's a bargain. And you know, Chris Godwin. So what's going to go on with Chris Godwin? So the main conversation to have is like, who's more important, Chris Godwin or Shaq Barrett? And to me, all day, it is Shaq Barrett. Why? Because Shaq Barrett is irreplaceable for this defense. If you get rid of Shaq Barrett, this defense is still good, but it's certainly not on the level that it was in that Super Bowl when they had everybody healthy, right? And Shaq Barrett is a top 5 edge player in the league. He is extremely versatile. He's a perfect pick and fit for this defense. So if you had to get rid of either one, it's Chris Godwin. And it's because you're going to get AB back. Nobody else in the league is going to want to sign him. And he only wants to play with Tom Brady. So AB is going to come back. Okay, you could probably get him for like 4, $3, $4, $5 million. Okay, 1 year, 2 years maybe, $3, $4, $5 million. Okay, AB's going to be cheap. So is Gronk. Okay, so the question is Godwin or Shaq, and to me it's Shaq because the depth at that position isn't as good on your roster, and you're wanting to win right now. Okay, so if you're wanting to win right now, Shaq is the better player right now. He's more important to you right now. Okay, so I think I've seen it so many times. Tom Brady can do without an amazing receiver. Chris Godwin's a great receiver, but we've seen Tom Brady do without, great receivers. And it's not like he wouldn't have Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and then Tyler Johnson, who looks like a really promising slot receiver, Scotty Miller, who you would already have, not to mention you'd probably be able to sign another veteran like Edelman, Amendola, whoever you want that Brady loves, and just bring him in as your other guy, okay? And then you have, rumors of Odell and all this stuff that I don't even want to get into, but that could happen too. So I think the guy that if you had to choose would be Chris Godwin. But what I think is going to happen is Shaq will be signed, and I think Chris Godwin's going to get the franchise. That's what I think. Chris Godwin's only 24 years old, so he has time to bet on himself. So he's going to get $14, $15 million this year. That's a fair contract. It's about the same as what Mike Evans makes. And he'll be willing to play one more year on a 1-year deal. Shaq Barrett, I think they'll sign to 2 to 3 to 4 years and make him, a long-term solution. I think maybe they do it the other way around, where they franchise Shaq and let go of Shaq next year and they sign Chris Godwin. Either way, I think they'll keep both. The guy that I think is going to be troublesome to keep is Lavonte David from what I hear. From what I hear, Lavonte David could be asking for, not him asking for, but could warrant, right? Because he's a really good player. I think other teams would be willing to give Lavonte David a lot more money than Tampa because Tampa has to re-sign all these teams. Then again, like 15 teams in this league don't even have money to spend. So, Lavonte David, I think if there was ever a year for him to just take a pay cut, it'd probably be this year. So, and I think Lavonte David's that type of guy where he'd be, he's older. All he wants to do is win. All he wants to do is remain a Buck for the rest of his career. I could totally see Lavonte David taking a team-friendly contract to stay in Tampa, as long as it's not drastically lower than the other team that's offering him a deal. If Cleveland offers him $15 million for 2 years, like 2 years, $30 million, and Tampa offers him 2 year, $10 million, obviously he's going to go to Cleveland. But if it's like 2 years, $30 for David, and it's in Cleveland, and it's 2 years, $20 million in Tampa, he'll probably stay in Tampa. I don't know. That's just my opinion. That's just the way I see him. That's just the way I think he is. Otherwise, Ndamukong Suh has said he wants to come back. I think he will. That would be a loss. I think you could see them cut William Golston. That certainly could be a cap casualty if they need to. I think Ross Cockrell will be gone as their fourth corner. They might look to upgrade that position with, maybe a guy that, maybe like a Jason McCourty or maybe like another veteran type of corner, Patrick Peterson, I don't know. Or they could go with, Patrick Peterson would make sense actually because Bruce Arians, and Todd Bowles more specifically, but they could look to the draft as well. They already have a very young secondary, so I'd rather them go after a veteran corner like a Patrick Peterson or like a Jason McCourty, but that would just be my opinion. Safety-wise, I think they're fine. They could probably add one in the draft. Winfield and Whitehead are both very young players. Those are their two primary starters, and who's the other guy? Edwards is still young too, so they've got their trio there. Pretty much, guys, they are loaded. They don't have really any holes, and it feels like they're going to be able to get everybody back. So, and Leonard Fournette, I would say, would be the guy that's going to leave. Okay, so Ronald Jones is going to stay. He'll be their starter, And I think they might draft another guy. Of course, they drafted Keyshawn Vaughn last year, who didn't look very good this year, so they'll have to evaluate him. My thing would be running back. James White is like the dream signing here. I know James White isn't Randy Moss, okay, or Adrian Peterson, but like James White would make this offense so much better. Even if it's like Rex Burkhead or Duke Johnson, like one of these pass catching backs, even if it's like Le'Veon Bell, bro, for like 1 year, $2 million, they need a pass catching running back. Just third down, catch the football, win one-on-one routes, what they wanted Shady to do, what they wanted Vaughn to do. James White would be so good for this team. I mean, he's such a good player. He's such a smart player. He's such a good role player. And that is exactly what, and he would be super cheap too, I think. So if they could get him, that would be unbelievable. Who else? They do have to look at some backup, maybe veteran tackle types and guard types just to shore up that offensive line. But, I mean, maybe linebacker depth, but that could come through the draft. Like, I'm being very nitpicky here. I don't really see anything else. Overall, I think this team is going to be set up to be very, very good. The scary part about Tampa Bay is they have all their draft picks. They just won the Super Bowl, and they're $13 million. Right? And they just won the Super Bowl ahead of schedule. They weren't expected to win the Super Bowl this year, except for me. So Tampa's looking real prime right now. So congratulations, Bucs fans. You guys are going to be good again. Congrats. All right. And the last team in the NFC South is the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints 2021 offseason, I think, is going to be an absolute just incredible thing to watch. I mean, you see the number right now, minus $69 million. Now, I think that's come down since they've made some releases of Jared Cook and Josh Hill and Nick Easton and some of these guys that they've released. So this number must have come down at least a little bit here. But I expect the Saints to get rid of more players. I expect them to lose a lot of names you've been familiar with over the last couple of years on their roster. And I expect them to try to rebuild with some young players on both sides of the football. Now, I don't think the Saints are going to be bad next year at all. They might have lost Drew Brees, which I hope they have. I don't want Drew Brees to come back. If I'm a Saints fan, I think he's done. I think he's lost it. I think his noodle arm is no more, so don't give me Drew Brees anymore. But I think Jameis will be back. I think that's the number one question for you guys is who's going to be your quarterback. I believe it will be Jameis Winston, and the more I think about it, the more I think Jameis Winston will be good. And I think Taysom Hill will still be there, so you'll have a solid enough backup and also hybrid player. Running back Alvin Kamara is there, so minus $58 million, says Nick Gill now. Okay, that makes sense. So they've moved it a little bit. Offensive line-wise, they're good at tackle. They're secure there. Guard-wise, they're pretty good. Center, they're good. I mean, offensive line's built, so they'll still have a run game. They might have to cut like a Latavius Murray to move some more space out of there and potentially replace him through the draft with a younger player. That would be a type of player that I'd look to cut. I'd look to move on from Emmanuel Sanders. I'd look to move on from any of those wide receivers that are maybe carrying some dead weight. I think what we saw last year, Michael Thomas was beat up, but I don't think Michael Thomas is going to go anywhere. I think they're going to try to keep Michael Thomas as much as they can. I think, there's been rumors that he could be traded, but maybe it's worth it. But he's a number one wide receiver. He is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's only 25, 26. He's super young. He's in his prime. He's still awesome. He fits the offense very well. I wouldn't see them moving for Michael Thomas. We saw Deontay Harris actually become a legit weapon. So he could be the number 2, number 3 wide receiver. They could look to draft somebody at wide receiver. Their tight end is definitely going to be much weaker. I think you could see Taysom Hill play a little bit more tight end next year. And I think you could see maybe a draft pick there. Defense is where they're probably going to have to cut some weight. So Malcolm Brown's on the block. Sheldon Rankins is a free agent. Trey Hendrickson is a free agent. I think they want to keep David Onyemata. I think they want to keep Cameron Jordan. Although maybe Cameron Jordan, is it time to trade him for a pick? Right? You're $58 million in debt. I mean, Marcus Davenport, he hasn't really lived up, but he's still a solid enough player where he could be a starter. So I think what we're going to see from the Saints is they're just going to be a lot more top heavy than they've been in recent years. The thing with the Saints over the past 3 years, 4 years, has been they have been one of the best top to bottom rosters in the league. I think that New Orleans now is just going to be more top heavy, and they're going to have to refill the bottom of their roster with less expensive players, like more rookies, more young players. And they're going to have to cut the end of their roster. So Marshawn Lattimore could be on the move, although I don't think they want to trade him. I don't think they're going to be able to resign Marcus Williams. I think he's gone. Malcolm Jenkins, I know they just signed him last year. He might be gone too. Janoris Jenkins, doesn't really make sense to keep him. They could move him as well. Like a lot of these guys that aren't young, Demario Davis could be on. Anybody that is older that has been with this recent regime of Saints could move, because I think they need to get younger and they need to fix this cap. Okay? So it's going to be a very different, I think, looking specific defense for New Orleans. And yes, they have needs. Like I said, I think they'll bring back Jameis. Safety is going to be a need. I don't think they're going to be able to address it. I don't think they're going to be able to address anything in free agency, guys. Like, honestly, I do not. I think most of their free agency is going to be cutting guys, getting rid of guys, and drafting. They're going to have to draft all these positions. Linebacker, wide receiver, cornerback, tight end, right? Because you have a certain amount of cap that is put away for your draft. Okay? So that is what they're going to do this offseason. It's a complete rebuilding, retooling for New Orleans. But, again, I don't think they'll be bad. I think New Orleans will be 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7. I think they'll be a solid enough team to compete. They kind of remind me a little bit of New England last year, where they're going to have to go through some retooling, some rebuilding. They still got great coaching, though, so that will keep them afloat. And it's going to be all about finding Jameis, finding what Jameis Winston is. And I actually think he's going to be surprisingly good with New Orleans, but that's just my opinion. So let me know what you guys think about New Orleans. They're a really interesting team, and they're the only team I can't really go over who they could get, because minus $58 million, you can't sign anybody. So yeah, we'll see what they do, and if they ever, get back closer to earth, let's just say. All right, the final division of the free agency team plans, the NFC West. Let's kick it off with the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams, they are also in a tough cap position. Okay, they just got their quarterback, Matthew Stafford. I actually want to double check this cap, because I don't even know if this is right. I really feel like this might be off. The LA Rams cap space. Let me see. Cap space, NFL teams. Let's just check. I don't even know how some of these teams make these moves, to be honest. Okay. How does Jacksonville have $85 million in cap space? How's that even possible? So the LA Rams do have minus $29 million in cap. So they've moved $5 million. Okay. Interesting. Laptop, shut up. Okay. Yo, shut up. All right. Interesting. Okay. All right. So the LA Rams 2020. Oh, am I lagging now? I don't want to lag. We good? I don't think we're lagging anymore. All right. Let's just take a sip. Okay. The Los Angeles Rams 2021 NFL offseason, minus $29 million in cap space. That is the second least amount of cap space in the NFL. And the Rams do have some free agents that are going to be lost because of this. John Johnson is probably going to be pretty unlikely that you re-sign. Same as Floyd, Leonard Floyd. One or both of those guys is going to have to go. You also have some other free agents a little bit lower on the list of priority, like you have Josh Reynolds as a free agent, you have Gerald Everett as a free agent, you have Troy Hill as a free agent. The three big ones being Troy Hill, Leonard Floyd, John Johnson. So the Rams most likely are going to lose two of those guys at the very least. They might be able to keep one, they might be able to franchise one, whatever it may be. If I were to keep one of them, it would probably be John Johnson because of all he does for the secondary and the just hybrid ability he offers you. But Leonard Floyd's hard to ignore too of how well he played. So the Rams once again are going to have to work their magic in working the cap, finding the diamonds in the rough 2 years in a row, right? 3 years in a row. They found Dante Fowler and they found Leonard Floyd. And right last year when they signed Leonard Floyd, you're like, of course they signed Leonard Floyd. He's just like Dante Fowler. It's the same guy. And of course, he has a great year, a career year. So they seem to be able to find that type of edge player if need be. So maybe Leonard Floyd's the guy to go. Now, offensively, I'd like to see them add a deep threat type of wide receiver, if that's through the draft or maybe just a low-tier free agent type. I'd like to see them add a little bit of speed, a little bit of downfield ability. But offensive line is probably your main priority because, Austin Blythe's a free agent. I forgot about him. And the guard position overall is not very good. You need to be able to protect Matthew Stafford, right? So the way I see LA looking is they'll probably have a better offense thanks to Matthew Stafford, but a worse defense, okay? I think you need to look at some low-tier guards. Probably a lot of this is going to come through, the mid to low end of the draft and possibly some veteran trades. That's the way the Rams usually typically operate. So looking at some of the free agents at guard, I think they could go for... Interesting. I think they would like to keep Blythe at center. And I think they would probably like to go for some of these guys that have played in the system before. So taking a look at the guard position, Ben Garland at center or guard from San Francisco would make sense. I think Alex Redmond from Cincinnati would make some sense. Same as Tom Compton. Lane Taylor possibly would be maybe a little bit more expensive. But I do think that they need to get some guard help, some interior offensive line help for Matthew Stafford. And I think that was a problem with them with Jared Goff. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more of a traditional drop back pass team because I think Stafford is better at that significantly than Jared Goff. So to not use it would be just sacrificing part of your offense. We've seen that Sean McVay is excellent at getting by with limited offensive lines. The hope is Andrew Whitworth, comes back and doesn't retire. So that's another thing. I think the Rams are in a worse spot than people realize, I think, financially. But I think thanks to the fact that they upgraded at quarterback so substantially, I think that's what people don't understand is, like, one, how much better Matthew Stafford is than Jared Goff. And two, they had to upgrade at quarterback because they weren't going to be able to stay the same on defense. They weren't going to be able to retain all of these depth players that they had because of their cap positioning. So, the Rams, draft is going to be key. Maybe some veteran trades. Upgrade that interior of the offensive line. Try to find some diamonds in the rough for the players that you lose on defense. But overall, you guys should remain a top defense. Maybe top 10, maybe not top 1 because you lost your coordinator. You're going to lose a couple players. But your offense should be better enough to, be able to remain that. So, free agency plan, man, is mostly just getting out of your own way cap-wise, probably saying goodbye to some of your former players, and finding those under-the-radar veterans and diamonds in the rough on both defense and the offensive line, as well as probably adding a deep threat wide receiver, rather through the draft or through free agency. So those are the goals for me for the LA Rams to get Matthew Stafford and this team to where they want to go. The Rams. Ooh. What's going on, guys? Got 3 more. 3 more. I can do it. We got 3 more. How's everybody feeling right now? If you haven't already, Gronk, spike that like button and subscribe to the channel for more NFL, guys. And reminder that if you haven't, check out the AFC team plans, free agency plans. That is also in this playlist. Okay? Follow us on Instagram. Links in the description. Follow us on Discord, or join the Discord, I should say. Okay? The community, the bottom line viewers. Join them. What's up, Dosa Dion? Already discussed the Lions, though. All right. Couple more teams to go. Let's go Seattle. Seattle's a mess. Okay, Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks 2021 free agency plan. $4 million. Russell Wilson on the block. Is he on the block? Is he off the block? Does he want to play? Does he not want to play? Because that's just going to completely determine what the heck is going on with the Seattle Seahawks. If they have Russell Wilson, okay, we're talking. Let's try to get into contender mode. If they don't have Russell Wilson, sorry, you are not going to be in contender mode. You're going to be in the bottom of the barrel of the league. I'm sorry. Okay? So Seattle first needs to figure out what is going on with Russell Wilson. Period. That's the first and foremost. Then, okay, we have to fix the defensive line. So Seattle wants to play a defense where they rush 4, right? They want to get after the quarterback with their 4 beastly defensive linemen. They haven't had a good defensive line in like 4 years. They need a good defensive line to be successful. So I would expect them to look to sign free agent pass rushers or to get one in the draft for sure. Wide receiver wise, I do have it on there. I think they could use a number 3 target, a low end, number 3 target. David Moore was kind of that last year. He's kind of a one-trick pony. They brought in Philip Dorsett. He didn't really work out. But I also think with Russell Wilson, this whole drama going on, I could see him wanting more receivers. I could see him wanting a tight end. I could see him wanting to sign, Hunter Henry, whoever it may be, to upgrade that spot. But I don't really see tight end as a need because I think Will Disley's fine enough. Running back-wise, Chris Carson's probably on his way out, so you got to replace Chris Carson. I think a great guy to replace him with would be your former running back, Mike Davis, who just played awesome for Carolina and is basically the same player as Chris Carson. I think bringing back Carlos Hyde wouldn't be a bad idea. And there are probably some other guys that you could look at as well. Let me take a look for specifics here. So running backs, I think Mark Ingram maybe? Mark Ingram's a free agent. I know that Seattle likes their power backs. Marlon Mack. You could maybe get Marlon Mack for pretty cheap. Marlon Mack. Those type of guys, I think. Maybe the draft. I think the draft certainly could be a place that you look at the running back, as always. And then you have center. Center-wise, I just feel like they just signed somebody. So actually, that's not a need anymore. Or no, wait. Never mind. Justin Britt signed with the Texans. I'm getting confused. Never mind. I think they should bring back Ethan Pocic. I think, personally, I don't really see anywhere you could go. Maybe you sign, maybe you would like to sign Corey Linsley. I don't think that's going to happen. Ted Karras, I think, would be maybe a slight upgrade over Ethan Pocic. I don't see a lot of upgrades in free agency from Pocic. I think Pocic wasn't the problem. I don't think the center is really a big issue if you re-sign him. But somewhere in that department, Seattle has not wanted to spend on offensive line. They've not spent on offensive line. So that's the interesting part. Did they determine that they want to spend on offensive line now because Russell Wilson says he gets sacked too much? Okay? So that's something, right? All of this stuff is going to be dictated by Russell Wilson, let me tell you. Now, they could spend a little bit more on guard. Like, I could see them bringing in, like, Gabe Jackson, for example, from the Raiders. I could see that. They could use that upgrade. I think that would be a nice addition. I don't think, though, they have enough money for Brandon Scherff or Joe Thuney. Maybe, but, like, if I'm Russell Wilson, would I rather have my defense have an edge rusher or Brandon Scherff? Like, bro, I'd rather have Gabe Jackson and Trey Hendrickson than Joe Thuney and Benson Mayowa again. Like, I'm good with that. I don't, I want my defense to be better. So that would be me if I'm Russell Wilson. Cornerback, wide receivers, man. Cornerback, wide receivers. So Shaquille Griffin's a free agent. I don't think he's coming back, honestly. I think he's going to go somewhere else. Maybe they'd like him back, but I don't think he's a top priority. I think they could look to sign Xavier Rhodes. I think they could look to sign Patrick Peterson. I think they could look to sign Quentin Dunbar back. They could look to sign AJ Bouye. I think that would actually make a lot of sense. Michael Davis, Ahkello Witherspoon, Emmanuel Mosley, Desmond Trufant would make a lot of sense. All of these guys, I think, would make sense for them at cornerback in that system. And then you have, what else? I think I pretty much went over all their needs. Edge, yeah. Oh, edge specifically. I think Trey Hendrickson would be ideal for them, like that type of player. Obviously, Carl Lawson, I think, might be too rich for their blood. Yannick Ngakoue would be great. I think, why not bring back Jadeveon Clowney if you could? I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit too, what's the word? Fragile? I don't know. Melvin Ingram. Sign Melvin Ingram. Okay? Do it. Seattle. You hear me? Sign Melvin Ingram. Do it. Okay. I think that's it. Honestly, Seattle, if I was your general manager, I'd be trying to rebuild the defensive line as much as I could. Once I got that done, I'd be looking to the offensive line. And that's, everything else is gravy for me because that's your main weaknesses. Offensive, defensive lines. That's why you got bullied by the Rams. That's why you lose to those type of teams, is because you have no hope on either side of line of scrimmage. You've got a freaking monster in DK Metcalf. You've got a very good number 2 receiver in Tyler Lockett. You got a good enough tight end. Running back, we'll figure out later. Who cares? Defensively, corners, yes, we could use them, but we've got great safeties, and we know that you don't value corners in your defense. So we'll just look for those zone guys that are veterans, that are smart enough, They can play in our defense. KJ Wright also probably going to be gone, unfortunately. He'll go somewhere else. But if you fix the defensive line and the offensive line, the Hawks will be a really good team, I think, if Russell Wilson's still there. That's just my opinion, though. All right. The Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt, the Houston Texans 2.0. Will they bring in Bill O'Brien? Probably not, definitely not, but I just wanted to throw in that joke. The Arizona Cardinals still have some money to work with. Now, I don't know if I put this graphic in after or before they signed J.J. Watt, so I don't know if they have $11 million still or not, but they still have some money to work with. Here's the thing with Arizona. I didn't love the J.J. Watt signing, although I think it makes them better. Don't get me wrong, but I just didn't love the value of it overall. I think they have a lot of needs on the offensive line. I think their wide receiver core is very, very, very overrated. I think they need cornerbacks, so they have lots of needs. So I'm going to lay out how I feel Arizona should go about this. So the way I look at it for Arizona, offensive line-wise, I like DJ Humphries. I like Justin Pugh. I'd maybe try to get Justin Pugh to take a pay cut. That would be me. What else we got? Now, the rest of the offensive line, I need to completely reshape and restructure. Okay? So now I know that you guys have like Marcus Gilbert, I think, coming off COVID, and you have Josh Jones coming from third round last year who wasn't very good. So I would look to the draft for my tackle position probably, and at least I'd hope for a tackle, but I would look to probably add, what's first and foremost for them? So edge Hassan Reddick probably will have to be gone. I'm not quite sure how they're going to have to bring him back. Honestly, I would just look to replace him. I think he is possibly a very replaceable player, given that he had production in just like a few games. I'd probably look for a Tyus Bowser type player. It's probably going to go for half the money. Jordan Jenkins, one of these type of guys. Like, you have Chandler Jones coming back, okay? You need a number 2 edge guy. Number 2. You could bring back, what's his name? Marcus Golden. He's perfect for that. Bring Marcus Golden back. Have Chandler Jones on the other side. You got J.J. Watt up front. You've got a decent enough front. I don't think you're missing too many guys. You've got the linebackers down. So really what I'd look to do is I'd look to add a corner. Corners in general, I think, would be valuable to them. I think they're probably going to move on from Patrick Peterson. I'd probably look to get younger at that spot. You have Murphy, who's primarily a nickel corner. So I'm looking to upgrade my perimeter corners. I don't think you're going to get William Jackson. I just think he's going to go too much money. Maybe Jason Verrett, maybe Ronald Darby, maybe Chidobe Awuzie. I'm trying to connect the dots here with the coordinator. I don't think anyone would be on this market that's familiar with him. Could be wrong, though. But I would look to get some veteran corners, upgrade the cornerback group. Pretty much. So that's where the defense needs help, is just coverage. Coverage in general. I think you've got a solid foundation of pass rush, and you need depth, too. So you got to look to the draft for the depth on the D-line, depth at linebacker, depth at safety, depth at corner, all of that for the draft, I think. But fill the primary starters with free agents and try to bring in some corners specifically. Offense-wise, we already talked about it. Center, tackle, guard. I think you could find centers and guards in free agency. I would try to bring back Sweezy, okay? I would try to bring, so then you would have, let's say, Pugh and Sweezy. So you need a center. I'd try to draft my right tackle. And then I'd try to probably add a wide receiver in free agency. So who's a value wide receiver that you could get? Doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'd like to re-sign Dan Arnold too if I could, but wide receiver, man, wide receiver. If you guys could get like AJ Green, Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton, Marvin Jones. I don't think you'll get Curtis Samuel, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, I don't know how much money they have to work with. Even like Golden Tate could take place of Larry Fitzgerald in the slot. That wouldn't be bad, I don't think. So I'd look to add a veteran receiver for pretty cheap, and I'd look to spend most of my money on the cornerbacks and the offensive line for this team. Also an interior D lineman, but I think J.J. Watt's going to play mostly interior. So, yeah, I think Arizona's not in a great spot, but they have some really good players, right? They have Budda Baker, J.J. Watt, potentially Isaiah Simmons if he can play better this year, Chandler Jones. Maybe you move on from him or ask him to take a pay cut potentially because he's making a lot of money. And then on the other side of the ball, Kyler, obviously. I think the biggest thing for Arizona is you need to find a way to get the next level out of Kyler. And I honestly think a lot of that comes from the coaching staff. And I would like this offensive line to get back to just average. I don't think the Arizona offensive line needs to be stellar because I think part of the reason you have Kyler Murray is so that you can spend money elsewhere and not on the offensive line. Like, part of having a guy that can run like that and run around and escape and buy time is to not spend a lot of money on the offensive line. But at least be average, okay? At least be average, which I don't think they were last year. So Arizona, very, very fascinating team because they have some big needs, but they already have spent some big money, which is very rare early in the offseason. All right. The final team of the NFC, AFC, NFL free agency game plans with me, Mitch Milani. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go spike that like button. The final team, all right, San Francisco. The 49ers. San Fran, one of my adopted squads. My boy, Kyle Shanahan. Kyle, listen to me, Kyle. I have a message for you. Kyle, get a quarterback. It doesn't matter what the rest of your team looks like, Kyle. Get a quarterback. I don't care if you have to get rid of some of your best players. Get a quarterback. That's what's holding you back. You need a secure, long-term quarterback that you can count on. John Lynch, do you hear me? Are you listening? Quarterback. Deshaun Watson. Bring him to San Francisco. Okay, I'm done with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm done with Nick Mullins. I'm done with the rotation. Quarterback. Is it the draft? Is it Watson? Is it a trade? Matt Ryan? Kirk Cousins? Heck, is it Cam Newton? Who is it? You need a quarterback. Okay? The rest of your division has Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, I think, and Kyler Murray. Quarterback. That's first thing. Okay? From there, it doesn't matter. You got to understand. with Kyle Shanahan and a quarterback, this team bare minimum is 9 wins a year. It doesn't matter how good the defense is. It doesn't matter how beat up wide receivers are. It doesn't matter if Kittle's playing. It doesn't matter if they have an offensive line. If the 49ers have a good quarterback and a Kyle Shanahan, they're a good team. It doesn't matter. This is what I don't understand about the 49ers. This team said no to Tom Brady. Think about that for a second. They said no to Tom Brady. The tackle position, the guard position, those things need to be addressed as well. So as much as I want you guys to get a quarterback, you also need to address other things. But Trent Williams would be nice to have back. Obviously, he's an amazing player. But I think it's all for naught if you don't have a damn quarterback. Okay? So Trent Williams would be awesome. Sign him, franchise him if you can. But I don't think it's worth signing Trent Williams unless you have a damn quarterback. So if you don't have a plan at quarterback, just don't sign him because he's already like 32. So what are you going to have, 3 years? I mean, I guess it's important if you have like a Mac Jones or a rookie quarterback that you want to protect. Okay, you could talk me into that. Guard-wise, you're looking at probably an upgrade. I'd love to keep Daniel Brunskill if I'm San Francisco. He can play tackle, he can play guard. Okay? It doesn't feel like, Mike McGlinchey's their right tackle as much as some 49ers fans. I'm talking to you, Lenny. Doesn't like Mike McGlinchey. He's staying, okay? Center position, it sucks, but Richburg's your center. Unless they cut him, because he's always hurt. He's a good player when he plays. Guard-wise, Tomlinson's solid, but you need to look at the other guard. That might be coming through the draft. Maybe they bring back Tom Compton, maybe Brunskill, maybe one of those guys. Maybe even if they move on from Trent Williams, they keep Brunskill. They move McGlinchey to left tackle. They put Brunskill at right tackle or vice versa. They could do that too. Defense-wise, that's pretty much all you need on offense, okay? You've got a running back. You've got a great tight end. You've got, oh my God, okay? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, forget it. That might be the best trio in the league when they play. I don't care. Defensively, all right? Nick Bosa's back. It would be nice to have Kerry Hyder back if he's not too expensive because he was really good for you last year. Solomon Thomas, say goodbye to him. See ya. You got 2 studs in the interior. So what you're really looking for is, rotation, depth, edge guys. Nothing too crazy. Like, damn, bring back Aldon Smith. Bring him home. Like a pass rusher or something like that. Like, I don't see anybody. You don't need to spend big money on this. Kerry Hyder would be ideal. I don't know what's going on with D Ford, though. I really don't. Maybe he gets cut. Maybe he doesn't. I don't exactly know. But they're already pretty good on the defensive line. So that's not really a big deal. Now, I'd like to re-sign Jaquiski Tart as well. There's other options that if you don't, you could maybe go after Keanu Neal. You could maybe go after Rashawn Jenkins. You could go after Trey Boston. You could go after Xavier Woods. You could go maybe after a rookie, but there's some players out there at strong safety. Maybe they take a swing at like Marcus May, but I doubt it. Cornerbacks would be nice to have, although that is not really what they value in this defense. Mostly what they value is safety, linebacker, and defensive line, and they basically have all those things. Warner is good there, and Greenlaw, you've got some linebackers. Cornerbacks, all of them are basically free agents. Sherman, Verrett, Mosley, literally all of them are free agents. You do not have a single corner. So when I'm looking at that, I think Sherman is probably going to be gone, it feels like, and I'd like to keep Jason Verrett, but I don't think he wants to be back. So I think you guys are going to have to draft a corner in the first round. Maybe the second round. But you could bring in, I think Michael Davis would be an awesome fit. Michael Davis. Shaquille Griffin could be a fit there. I think AJ Bouye would be a fit. Desmond Trufant would be a fit. All these guys have played in this system before. Oh, main priority, keep K'Wan Williams. Keep K'Wan Williams, though. I think you can, too, because he's been hurt, and he's a nickel corner, so he won't cost that much. So, keep K'Wan Williams. Keep one of Mosley or Witherspoon if you can. And move on from Sherman, draft a corner, and bring in Michael Davis. All right? Keep Tart if you can. If not, move on. Okay, whatever. But I actually think San Francisco looks good, okay? Even if that means they only have, Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, I still think they're hovering around playoff territory, just the way I've been thinking through all these NFC teams. You guys got to realize, $12 million for 49ers is pretty impressive given how good their team is, their roster is, and given how many teams are in the negative right now somehow, some way. So Niners are not in a bad spot at all. They certainly have needs, corner, tackle, offensive line in general, quarterback obviously, but I think they can retool it quite well and be in a good spot to make another playoff push next year. So those are the NFC playoff previews. Those are the NFC free agency team plans for all 16 teams. Hope you guys have enjoyed this mini-series of me breaking down every team and playing GM for every NFL team. If you enjoyed, idea for me to kind of continue this series or something with the team building aspect, the GM aspect, guys, I love doing that stuff. So if you're fascinated by that, then let me know in the comments and let me know what your idea is so maybe I could get around to doing it. But plenty of free agency coming, especially next week. We are gearing up for the start of the signings. Thank you guys, everybody, for watching. Thank you for tuning in live. It's Mitch. Thanks for all the support. Peace.